Hello to anybody who is out there. Maybe everybody is still hiding away after that disappointing performance, disappointing result. Celtic in the first half played off the pitch. Roma showing Celtic how to play the 3-4-2-1 formation. Celtic. However, Celtic 3-0 down by half time. However, Arnie Engels stepped up a couple of minutes into added time, the end of the first half, had a chance to get Celtic back into the game. Unfortunately, he missed. Early in the second half, Kelechi Iheanacho, who did make a real difference. Just turn that down. Kelechi Iheanacho, who did make a difference coming on for Dyson Maeda. He then was unfortunately offside. That would have been Celtic getting back into the game. And having said that, also Celtic in the first half, Rio Hatate about 6-7 yards out, put it over the bar. So it was actually a game in which Celtic had the chances. We don't miss a penalty if Iheanacho keeps himself on side as he should have done, because he actually was completely free in the middle. And if Hatate just kept that wee bit calmer, it would have been 3-3. Looking at the stats for the game, Celtic had more possession. Celtic actually had quite a lot of shots at goal. Celtic had lots of passes, lots of possession. They had 4 corners to 4. But the real key to the game, and as was the key against Hearts, Hearts put the ball in the net. Hearts had 3 shots on goal, 2 of them went in. Celtic had lots of shots on goal against Hearts. We didn't convert those chances. We had tons of possession against Hearts. I think it was like 72-28, but our final pass just wasn't there. And similar tonight, I've got the stats I'll put up a wee bit later on once we get the discussions going. Paul Maguire, great to have you back on. Also, I'm not sure if Michael McCafferty's still on, but I tried to do a wee response to Michael McCafferty, but I fully agree with both the two of you. I think in terms of the long-term putting in of this plan, of this different way of Wilfred Nancy doing his tactics and doing his formations, I think it was important for him to come in and get his framework and stuff straight in. Just a wee second, I'm just going to pop Nancy's interview on. So just going to wee pause just while we listen to.
We are not able to cope with the intensity, and they try to do
maybe well, you can hear it on the microphone.
The first half was difficult. We were not able to come out of the pressure, and we had a few moments where we unbalanced them, but we didn't keep the time edge that we had. So that's why it was difficult. So we were on the battle all the time. And as soon as we have a bit of time to play forward, we didn't take the good decision, but it was not easy for my players. I really liked the second half. Good reaction. We played with a little bit more proximity between players to escape the pressure, and we started a little bit more. After that, it's I don't like to talk about luck, but the first goal that we conceded didn't help also, because we on the corner again, but this time was an own goal. So to come from behind was not easy. So listen, the attitude was good. The attitude was good. Second half was better, but it was not enough. They were better than us.
Just listening to the Nancy interview.
What do you think that says about the message and how well that's being heard by the players at this stage?
No, listen, they did try. I cannot tell you that they didn't try. They tried, but the battle of power was too strong. Simple as that. And after that, we should have been able, to connect a little bit more, but we didn't do it. So again, this is the situation. I'm not concerned because I really like the reaction, and for me this is the most important. And they deserve at least to score one goal to see after that if the dynamic can change. But yeah, for the moment this is what's too strong.
The fans might be concerned, though. It's 2 defeats in a row, and given the fact there's a huge game looming on Sunday, a cup final, when do you begin to think this is, even though it's such an early stage of what you're trying to do, when do you think this is going to click into place and you'll see what you want to see out there?
No, I saw already good things. After that, the result, this is not what we want for sure, but I saw already good things. Today, I saw good things.
But when will the results change?
Sorry?
When do you anticipate the results will change?
I would like the result change today, but again, we play to win games. But the reality is this is not the situation. And we had also hit the post the last game. So again, at this moment, this is a bit, a bit difficult because I believe that my players deserve a little bit more.
Just going to listen to the end of the Nancy interview and then
but for the moment, we'll
start talking again. Some really good points coming in from all of them. I will get to them in a minute or two.
It was not easy to prepare the game.
I thought the interviews would be sooner than this.
The belief of my player is really strong, and this is the most important for me.
Just a final question. The players obviously have said that they need to look at themselves. Some of the supporters were booing at half time. Some walked out, before the end of the game. What would you say to them to be a little bit more? Is it patience you're looking for? Ahead of such an important game on Sunday.
No, listen. I respect the fans are really important for us. They are key. They know that, and we play for them. So this is clear. So now. They were not happy with the situation, so they show this. They show it. So again, I know where we are going. For the moment, in terms of result, this is not what we want, but I can see a lot of good things. And yes, patience. Obviously, this is something important. But I know also that patience, this is difficult in football. But I believe that in what we do, and I believe that shortly things are gonna go in our way.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry for that. I thought they would have the Nancy interview earlier than this. So I think if we do have another 8 o'clock kickoff, we'll probably do the live stream at 10:30 rather than at 10:15. Yes. So Paul Maguire, completely agree. Iheanacho, I thought, made a big difference. Held the ball up well. Came deep. Obviously, a lot stronger, a lot bigger than Daizen Maida. I personally would have much happier had Daizen Maida playing off of Iheanacho in the first half. Then you could have had Maida running in behind with his extra pace and stuff. So I would start Iheanacho on Sunday, assuming that he's fit, and Daizen Maida in the hole behind him, either dropping Nygren or Hatate. Nygren, Hatate, McGregor, Engels, the midfield four really didn't play at all today, and I think that was a massive thing. The midfield of Roma pressurised the ball, passed well, got the ball out wide, supported their attackers. Celtic tried awfully hard, but their first touch wasn't quite good. Their speed of passing wasn't quite good enough. But when they got it right, they created chances. Taneki got in behind. Iheanacho got in behind. We got Hatate, lovely move late in the first half. Hatate, clean on goal, shot the ball over the bar. Lovely move to set up the Iheanacho goal, but unfortunately was offside. Scales, I thought this is probably Scales' worst game he's had. He was a wee bit unlucky with the headed own goal. However, he let Ferguson free 3 times, and Roma scored 2 goals. Very poor defending. Ferguson made a good run. Scales didn't mark it in the second goal and the third goal. So I think Scales actually worked far better in the left centre back position, going into sort of left wing back position. I think Trusty's probably, of our fit defenders, is probably our best defender. Maybe he should have played centrally to Mark Ferguson. Maybe Tierney coming over to the right. Maybe trying Scales on the right. I thought Donovan and Ralston played pretty well when they came on. I'm not, Martin. I fully accept that that's your point of view. I don't think so. I think actually Celtic stepped up in the second half, played better than the second half. A lot of the things they were trying to do in this first half, Roma blocked them out. Roma defended really well at the back. Roma pressurised the ball, kept Celtic pinned back. I think Celtic had better solutions in the second half. I think the 3 substitutions worked. I think the fact that Celtic could get the out ball to Iheanacho worked in the second half. So I fully accept that's your point of view, and I think there's a lot of truth in it as well. However, I don't think Roma gave up in the second half. They tried. They had shots on goal. They had a disallowed goal. So I think they were trying just as hard. And also they brought on some of their stronger players as well. So I think Roma were trying to get as big a win as possible to boost their goal difference. Otherwise, there's no real reason to bring on a couple of their other star players. And I think that's also part of it, is that clearly Roma have an awful lot more power on the bench. Clashman Numpty, as often the case, a really good point of view. I think the blame for the result is largely with the performance of the players in the first half. Not good enough with their first touch, not good enough with their holding the ball up, not good enough in quickly passing from person to person. When they did get it right, it worked because we created chances. We got ourselves a penalty. Hatate put it over the bar. So, see, the thing is, Martin, D4H, I again fully accept your opinion. However, if we remember back how many 3-4 weeks to the Michelin game, we got gubbed by Michelin 3-0 in the first half. Much the same against Michelin. Second half, we played better. We got a goal back with the Hatate penalty. I don't think this is down to. I just think Roma are a considerably better team than Celtic. The power they've got coming off the bench is pretty incredible. So yes, I think that's. So Roma could have scored 5 in the first half. We had chances in the first half. Hatate over the bar, the penalty kick that was missed. Tierney had a good cross that was blocked out. We had pressure in and around their box in the first half. We had a goal disallowed. We had Hatate had a shot saved by the goalkeeper. We had chances in the second half as well. I thought Paul Maguire. I think one of the things with Yang, I thought Yang played well against Hearts. If anybody watches the Celts Are Here YouTube channel, Quinny did a really, really good analysis of all the stats and the ratings, etc. Yang actually statistically had a good game. I thought Yang was one of our better players against Hearts. He was very poor. I think simply because he was up against 2 very good wing-back fullbacks who snuffed them out the game. I don't think Celtic's link-up on the right-hand side was there like it was in the Hearts game in the first 30, 40 minutes. And Yang has always been an inconsistent player. I thought he played well against Hearts. He had a very poor game today, like many players. I think Iheanacho possibly was our best player. I thought Trusty defended very well in defensive terms. Scales had a nightmare. Tierney didn't have his best game. Chinek, he tried hard, but his final ball was very poor. Maeda was very poor. Again, we lost to Michelin 3-1. We lose to Roma 3-0. I would say that Roma are a better team than Michelin. That's borne out also by the fact that Roma beat Michelin a couple of weeks ago. It looked like it's for one reason or another. I think the early own goal by Liam Scales in the 6th minute, and then I think the players got deflated. I think the crowd got deflated. I was hoping that Celtic go 1-0 down after 6 minutes. There would be a massive roar and cheer and helping the players get themselves back into the game, like it was last season when we gave up goals such as to Bruges and stuff. We got ourselves back into the game when we played Young Boys Burn, and the game was going deeper and deeper and deeper. The crowd kept on cheering and shouting. Now it looked like a miserable day at Celtic, or evening at Celtic Park. Looked wet and miserable. But it felt like the players got deflated after giving up the early goal, and the crowd got deflated after giving up the early goal. And it's a bit like the game against Hearts. I thought Celtic against Hearts were miles the better team for the first 40 minutes. Hearts get their first attack, they score a goal. The players went flat, and I think that's the same again today. I think Roma played especially well. I think sacking him if he loses the cup final, that's one point of view, but I think that would be incredibly premature. They did say that Nancy is the first Celtic manager to lose his first couple of games. I'm not saying that they had a good performance. I'm saying the first half performance was very, very poor. Roma played exceedingly well, stopped Celtic from playing. Many of the things that Celtic should have been doing far better didn't go right. Missed the penalty. Yeah, fair enough. Yes, I think if we looked at the games at the start of the season, when we got our 8 games, I think losing to Roma at home was a perfectly reasonable thing to expect. They are one of the top teams in Italy. They're I think 3 points off second place in the Serie A. They've got incredible strength in the bench, incredible strength coming off the bench. Yes, Jim Cunningham, 9975. Roma are on a different level to Celtic. The quality of players they've got top quality internationals on the pitch, top quality internationals to come off the bench, incredible strength and depth. It was one of the comments I think the commentator and Joe Hart were talking about, is that Roma basically have now got a squad that's there to challenge for the Serie A title. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think the atmosphere was poor. I think there's lots of different reasons for that. I think giving up the early goal tonight, the cold, wet weather was a factor as well. I think Clashman numpty. I think obviously the game against Michelin was, I thought, as almost an equally poor performance tonight as it was against Michelin. At least against Michelin, we did come back to get one goal back, but it was very similar. Michelin played us off the pitch in the first half. Roma played us off the pitch in the first half here. 3-0 down at halftime in both games. I think Celtic had the chances to get a goal or two back in the second half. The situation regarding the Green Brigade being banned, it's also a matter for the police and for the courts at the moment, in that there are potentially quite serious charges. So I think it's probably better to leave that to one side, in that there are ongoing police inquiries, there's an ongoing court case, prosecution, etc. Yes, Gordon Strachan didn't play our best of football. We had quite a bit of a weaker squad, I thought, under Strachan than we had under O'Neill. But Strachan did get us in the end results. He won the league, he won cups, he got us deeper into the Champions League. We were really quite unlucky to get knocked out. Yep, I think it would be counterproductive if we did sack Nancy after 3 games. I don't think St Mirren. Now I'm touching wood at this point, obviously. I don't think St Mirren have got the quality that Hearts have got, and especially that Roma have got. I think if Celtic play this brand of football, they'll have more space they'll have more space against St Mirren, just like they had in the first 30 minutes. We think back to the game against Hearts. Maeda had 2 brilliant chances in the first 10 minutes to score, put us 1-0 up. I think that would have changed the crowd, changed the players. I think in theory, Nygren is a player that's going to work in the system. It doesn't seem that it's quite working so far. I think he is. I think having him as a free roaming attacking midfielder works. I'm not convinced that having Hatate, Engels in the same side works as things stand. Paulo Bernardo, I thought, did make a bit of a difference in the second half. Callum McGregor tried very hard, but he just didn't seem to really be getting himself on the ball and making good passes. Well, my purpose though, Chris D 3-11. Perfectly reasonable point of view. I think it would be counterproductive to sack him now. Obviously, there would then be several weeks of looking for a new manager, then bringing a new manager, massive compensation for Wilfred Nancy and his coaching staff. You've then got no time for anybody to prepare the transfer window in January. Engels didn't play well against Hearts, didn't play well against Roma. On the other side, I think possibly one of Hatate or Engels works in this system. Personally, I think Bernardo probably does deserve it. Eddie C8. I think Bernardo probably does deserve a chance. I think there's an argument to say that having Donovan or Ralston as the right centre back, Trusty as the central centre back, and Tierney as the left centre back against St Mirren on Sunday would be a good combination. Scales, I think, was one of our weakest players. Own goal to start the game, let Ferguson go several times, and on 2 of the times he let him go, Ferguson scored. I think Nancy has lots of good ideas, lots of good theories. It's just not working for one reason or another. And however, if we look at the game objectively, Celtic had the chances in the first half. Hatate to score to get Celtic back in the game, that would have made it 2-1 down. Then Roma got the other end, scored a goal. Then we get a penalty kick. Engels misses it early in the second half. Iheanacho, for no good reason, gets himself offside. It was a lovely move. Celtic opened up the defence. Lovely ball into the box. And Iheanacho, much like he did against Hibs in the 0-0 draw a couple of months ago, he's unnecessarily offside. Yes, I think there's an argument to have Donovan at right wing back, or I thought he did a pretty good job actually as the right centre back. I think there's an argument also to swap Kieran Tierney from the left to the right, have Trusty in the middle, and then Scales as the left centre back. It's a curious one. It looked. Joe Hart's theory was that Hatate was protecting the ball because Roma were still disputing and gesticulating with the referee, and the captain of Roma was still getting on at the referee. So I don't know whether Hatate was going to step up and take it. I'm sorry, I didn't hear Nancy's pre-match interview. I switched on a wee bit too late. I was doing something else. I was making food for my better half at the time, because obviously the Rangers game had been on before the Celtic game. I wasn't interested in watching the Rangers game, so I turned on a wee bit too late to hear the Nancy interview. So heard his post-match interview. I think Nancy is going to be a good manager for Celtic. I think it is going to turn around very soon. It's very similar to when we started out under Ange Postecoglou, with a lot of inconsistent results. Ange Postecoglou stuck to his guns. He stuck to his different style of football, and in the end, it came through. In the Ange Postecoglou first season, the 21-22 season, we were 6 points behind Rangers at halfway through the season. And in the second half of that season, once the players got fully blended into the system, Ange Postecoglou also added a few really good players in the January transfer window. In the second half of that season, we came from 6 points behind to win the league quite comfortably. So, in essence, Nancy has inherited the Brendan Rodgers squad. He's inherited the Brendan Rodgers mentality of playing football. I think Martin O'Neill did a really good job stabilising things. I think that, as I think Clashman Numpty, certainly someone a wee bit earlier on was saying, Celtic had a couple of really pretty poor performances. The St Mirren game that we won with the Callum McGregor shot in the 95th minute, against Dundee in what proved to be O'Neill's last game. We huffed and puffed. We got one good goal from Maeda. We weren't very clinical either against St Mirren or against Dundee in O'Neill's last couple of games. Obviously, things were considerably better against Feyenoord. I think probably Feyenoord was the best performance of Celtic, along with the game against Rangers. I can't see Wilfred Nancy and his three other coaches leaving a very, very safe job in America to come to Scotland. Was there not a real promise that they would significantly fund Nancy in the January transfer window and in the summer transfer window? I think Celtic actually have got the players at the moment to mould into this system. It's really a question of taking our chances when we get them. So Hatate in the first half, the penalty kick, and actually keeping himself on side. And obviously, it's down to players like Scales and Tierney, etc., defending better. It's partly the midfielders coming back to help out in defence as well. Oops. Yes. Yes, so it's a similar situation. Excuse me. It's a similar situation. I think the squad got very stale under Brendan Rodgers. I think his way of playing football wasn't as expansive as it could have been, as it should have been. I think O'Neill introduced a better system with those players. There's an argument to say that Nancy should have kept Martin O'Neill's system. I think, as we were saying a wee bit earlier on, however, Martin O'Neill's system against St Mirren in the 1-0 win, and the Dundee, the 1-0 win, we possibly got a wee bit lucky against St Mirren. Obviously, there was the goal that was the Liam Scales own goal that was disallowed, etc. So. Yes, as I said, I think I can't remember what it was. I did say this at some point, but in a YouTube or in a video or a comment section, there were so many people in Ange Postecoglou's first few months saying he'll never make Christmas. Oh yeah, someone has said that Nancy will be sacked by Easter. I don't see that personally. I think Celtic are going to come through in the second half of the season. But there were lots and lots of people who were wanting Ange Postecoglou sacked in those first few months. He'd made quite a few signings, so there was turnover of the squad, as someone was saying. But he did bring in quite a number of players. Kyogo was obviously one of the players he brought earlier on, but he made quite a few changes to the squad, lost a few players, got rid of a few players, brought in some players. It took obviously time for all those players to settle down into the system. I think if Celtic are going to commit to Wilfried Nancy, they're going to have to commit to Wilfried Nancy. They've decided to make him the manager. They've got to give him backing in the transfer window. They're going to give him backing now. I think the players will come around. I think the players will get better and better with the system. I think this system, this way of playing, will work far better against St Mirren than it would against Roma. An argument to say I think Celtic have got some really good players at the moment. I think Nancy and his coaching staff will mould them into a really good side. One could say that Ange Postecoglou had a harder start. Ange Postecoglou was really quite unsuccessful as a Celtic manager in European games, particularly in his early games. We lost some really quite disappointing games, such as to Livingston in those first few months. We lost to Rangers early in his career as well. So it's not the easiest start to a managerial career, playing against the team who's topping the league, then playing the third best team in Italy with an incredibly strong, powerful squad. Yes, you make a good point. I think there are some good players that Celtic have got. I think they will fit into this system. I think it's a question of fitting them into the system, the players getting confident, the players making the good decisions to make the right pass. I think if we're going to criticise Nancy, one of the things I would criticise Nancy for today, and it's not with retrospect, because I did actually, in my prediction video, I did suggest starting Kenny or Iheanacho as the centre forward with Maeda playing as one of the attacking midfielders. I think it worked far better with Iheanacho as a target man holding the ball up. Iheanacho would be the one I would go for against St Mirren on Sunday, with possibly Negrin, possibly Hatate behind, and Maeda. Two of those three behind Iheanacho. Chuneki, I was a wee bit surprised that Chuneki was the one that kept on going. I personally might have swapped Dyson Maida out to the left, taken Chuneki off, or swapped Yang over to the left. Chuneki, lots of nice runs, but his final ball, his final pass, his final shot was really disappointing. The problem, I think, again, I think Balikwisha will also fit into those attacking midfielder roles better than he does as a wide player. The snag's going to be that Balikwisha and Chunieki, after the St Mirren game on Sunday, are both off to the African Cup of Nations for about a month. Uncertain whether Iheanacho is going or not. I don't think he's been picked as yet by the Nigerian squad, but Balikwisha's off to the tournament, so is Chuneki for Tunisia and for Congo. The reason I'm wondering about you make a really good point. I think Celtic probably should have taken off one of Hatate or Engels and swapped the other into the other person's role. I thought Paul Bernardo did a fine job coming on. I have to say, as I said, I was a bit surprised that it was Juneki that stayed on. I would probably have swapped Maida out to that side, or Yang out to that side, or popped Maida behind Iheanacho. Chuneki, lots of nice runs, lots of nice winning the ball, but his final pass, his final cross, his shot, getting himself into the box to score goals, all was very poor. That's why I might have gone with Yang or Maida in that position. Wasn't too fussed. I thought Hatate, McGregor, Engels were all equally poor in the first half. So I'm not fussed about which one of those gets taken off. Just a wee second. Thanks for all these. I can't quite get with all these comments. Yes, you make a good point, Clashman Numpty. We were playing the third best team in Italy, a team that's added considerably to their squad over the summer holidays. I think they're really starting to come into form. They are getting better and better. They beat Midtjylland in the last Europa League game. They did actually lose the last couple of games in Serie A, one of which was to Napoli, which is excusable. They've got every chance of getting up into the top two over the next games. So it's not the easiest of starts. I don't personally think that Martin Neal was wanting to stay. I think Martin Neal thought, I'm going to be manager until the international break, and at the end of the international break, I'll be handing over to somebody else. I think that would have been a really good time to hand over. It would have given them the new manager a couple of easier games to get into. Unfortunately, the Scottish office and the Home Office down in Westminster slowed down the work permits for Nancy and the two French-Canadian coaches. Takes about between 3 weeks to up to 8 weeks to get your work permits, your visas, etc. With Scotland or the United Kingdom not being part of the EU, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for anybody to get a work permit and a visa to come and work in Scotland. So the fact that Celtic got the work permits and stuff through in 3 weeks was pretty good. Sometimes you can speed things up with the help of the Scottish Football Association and so on. It doesn't look like there was much help. I think fans are allowed to leave if they want to leave. I think I said in a previous live stream, or certainly in previous videos, and the times actually have gone to watch live games. I've never ever left a game early in my whole life. So even if Celtic or Scotland were losing, I would stay till the bitter end just in case a miracle happened. If you think about the game against Hearts, we had a gilt-edged double chance in the 85th minute, and then obviously Tierney's goal in the 93rd minute. That's why I've never ever left a game early. But I can fully accept that people were pretty miserable, 3-0 down at half-time, a miserable, wet, rainy night. Of all the teams I've seen playing in the Europa League so far this season, both in terms of games against Celtic and in terms of games against other people, Roma have looked the best team, I think, in the current Europa League. They've had one or two dodgy results earlier in the Europa League seasons. They lost to Victoria Pleasant, for example, but I think they're really, really coming into form both in Italy and in European football. So I think Roma are a very good team. I think they're the best team that we've played this season. I think that probably they will be the best team we will play this season. It'll be interesting when we do come to so we still are technically in the knockout place. Knockout places. We're down into the 24th place. Great to have you on, Lauren. Yes, I would be very much in agreement with you there, Lauren. I think Paolo Bernardo did a fine job. I thought Donovan did a fine job. Ian actually did a fine job. I think all those three people have very much played themselves into contention for Sunday. I think there's an argument to say that maybe Scales drops out, Tierney goes over to that side, you play Donovan or Ralston as the right centre back, have Trusty as the central centre back. So as I say, that 3-0 defeat, we're still on 7 points. Our goal difference has gone down to 4 minus 4. We're 24th, so we're still right in. We're in the qualification for knockout stage. We've got 2 more games to go. An away game against Bologna. I don't think Bologna are going to be as strong as Roma were. Bologna and Roma are about the same positions in the Serie A, but I think Roma are 2 or 3 steps above Bologna in quality. I think Bologna are a team maybe similar to Atalanta this time last season. We went to Atalanta in Bergamo 12 months ago, and we got a good battling draw over there. Utrecht have a 32nd. I think Utrecht's very much a game that Celtic can win. If we think back to last year's Europa League, the qualifying for knockout phase was 10 points and -2 as a goal difference. So theoretically, if we draw with Bologna and beat Utrecht, we're on 11 points. That's nearly certain to get us into the knockout phase, particularly because there are an awful lot of teams down the bottom at the moment on 6, 7, 8, 9 points, all within a very close range of each other. There's going to be teams beating each other, drawing with each other, that will keep everyone in the same kind of area. So I do think Celtic are a win against Utrecht and a draw against Bologna away from guaranteeing themselves into the knockout phase. But even a good win against Utrecht in the last game, if things went to the same plan as last year, would qualify Celtic for the knockout phase. No, I don't blame anybody for choosing. Obviously, everybody who was there paid their money. They paid for their tickets, their Europa League package tickets, all these things. So everybody's got the perfect right to make their decision. If they want to leave at halftime, leave at halftime. If they want to leave after 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 80 minutes, 90 minutes, perfectly fine. Yes, so I Martin D. Forich, yes, I think we have the potential. I think, as we showed against Feyenoord, with obviously exactly the same players, although playing a bit of a different system, we battled very hard. We took our chances against Feyenoord. We didn't take our chances tonight. It's been a recurring theme under Rodgers, under O'Neill, and now under Nancy, that we're making chances and not taking them. We're getting tons of possession and not taking it. No, I think, well, I think I think, Chris, the Major League Soccer is statistically, in terms of player quality, game competitiveness, all these things, it's currently the number 10 league in the world in terms of all these things: player value, player quality, competitive of games. There's a heck of a lot of money going around in Major League Soccer at the moment. Tons and tons of investment. The quality of players in Major League Soccer has gone up and up and up and up very steadily. And he got his Columbus Crew team to be the champions of America. He took the Columbus Crew to the highest position ever in the Copa America. He got them through to the final of the Copa America, which is the equivalent in America of the Champions League. So I think Nancy Ball will beat better teams. I think Nancy Ball, had Maeda taken his chances, had Negrin, Chinecki, and Engels taken their chances against Hearts, we could easily have been 2-3 goals up by half an hour. Hearts took 27 minutes to get the ball out their half. They had one chance in the first half, which they took. They had two chances in the second half, one of which was the Shankland probably offside shot that led to the corner, that led to the second goal. Even having gone 2-0 down, as I said, we had the double chance with Engels and Hatate. We had the Tierney goal. Tonight we had the chances to get ourselves back into the game when we were 2-0 down. We had the chance 3-0 down to go into half-time with a big confidence boost, but Engels hit the post. On another day, that hits the post and bounces in. On this day, it bounces out and goes wide. So I think Celtic are just a wee bit are close to turning things around. And I think, as someone was saying a wee bit earlier on, these kinds of comments, these kinds of thoughts and feedback are very, very similar to 4 years ago, in the first few months of Ange Postecoglou. A lot of the players who were playing for Celtic at that time, due to a variety of reasons, weren't thought to be as good enough to play for Celtic. Eventually, Ange Postecoglou got those players all together. The high energy, non-stop football that Postecoglou played, eventually it started to bear fruit. Celtic started putting their chances away. Kyogo scored a good number of goals in the first half of the season. Then Giakoumakis scored a good number of goals in the second half of the season. We brought in O'Reilly, Maeda, and Hatate in the January window. They all played really, really well in the second half of the season, and we came from 6 points down to win that league fairly comfortably. Well, going a goal down after 6 minutes, there's still plenty of time to get yourself back into the game. And as I said, Celtic had chances, didn't take them. When they did get the ball moving quickly, they did get Roma pulled out of position. They did get themselves space. Maeda wasn't very good for holding up the ball, whether that was because Maeda wasn't playing very well, whether he's not strong enough, whether it should have been Iheanacho in that position with Maeda playing off of him. That'll be the one main thing that I would criticise Nancy for. Was I would have started an Iheanacho or Kenny, but probably Iheanacho if he's fit, and he obviously was fit. He played 45 minutes, and for the most part, played with quite a lot of pace and aggression. I don't think Luke McCowan was really playing. When he was playing technically right wing, I don't think he was really playing right wing. He was playing more as a sort of an additional midfielder. However, he was having the odd good pass. He was having the odd good winning the ball back in midfield. I don't think his performances in that the right wing position under Nuno was particularly working for Celtic. Remembering those games were against. Latterly were against Hibs and then against St Mirren. Dundee. However, I think McCowan was doing all right. I think he, and particularly with this new system, I don't think he particularly fits the new system. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I think my personal opinion, just my personal opinion, and I have been right a few times and wrong lots and lots of times over the 53 years of being a Celtic supporter. I think that Celtic have got the quality to work with this system. I think it takes confidence to play the ball quickly. It takes confidence to take the ball in and then pass it quickly to other people. I do think that that Iheanacho is a better bet than Maeda. I think Maeda would be better in one of the attacking midfielder roles. I don't really see as it coaching to the boardroom. I think he's been brought in because he is an innovative coach. He's an exciting coach. The story was that there were 3 French clubs lining up to sign Wilfried Nancy as their new manager. Celtic got in there first. They got the negotiations in first for Nancy, and they brought him in. So yes, Rubber Duck 67. I think Celtic will. I think Celtic will come good. Clashman Numpty, you're quite right. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and as I've said before, as long as everyone's polite, respectful with their opinion, that there's no rude words and insults and so on going around, I'm all for everyone having their opinion. Everybody on this live stream is as expert as me or expert as anybody else, and I'm no expert. I'm just an enthusiastic fan of since 1971, 72. Something we'll come back to hopefully a wee bit later on. But one of my first ever memories as a Celtic fan was the Scottish FA Cup final when Celtic won 6-1. Dixie Deans, who sadly died a couple of days ago, scored a hat-trick. It was, I think, probably the first game I ever saw live on television. I was 4 years old, almost 5 years old. I'd seen Celtic playing in a reserve game shortly before that, and Celtic had become my team to support. It just so happened that my dad's team was Hibs, and so it was my team against his team live on BBC, or I guess it was BBC, for that cup final, and my team won 6-1, and one of my favourite players, Dixie Deans, scored a hat-trick. And shortly after that, my birthday in July, I got given a Celtic top, Celtic shorts, Celtic socks, and you could scarcely get the Celtic strip off me for the next several months. I even tried to wear it to school, but got told I couldn't. So So quite right. Personally, I think Nancy's had 2 games. The rub of the green hasn't gone in Celtic's favour. Celtic haven't been good enough at vital points, particularly they haven't defended when they needed to defend. Some 2 very, very poor defensive errors by Liam Scales. A couple of other defensive errors he committed later in the game. Luckily, in one case, Schmeichel bailed him out. The other time, Trusty bailed him out. Whether Scales fits into this system, I think Scales might actually work better as the left centre-back or even possibly as the wide left player, particularly if we're trying to have that more as a defensive position. I personally think, Lauren, that the board members, the executives, and so on that were there, I think they would be disappointed that that the fans walked out at half time or they walked out early. Clearly, I think I know other people have got different opinions. I think there are a large number of Celtic supporters on the board and in the executives. I think they do feel it when Celtic loses, but also they're human beings. So I think they've also got a degree of pride in their performance, and I think they, as they sort of tried to say in several different things, maybe not as well as they should have done, which is another matter. I think they take responsibility for not doing their side of the bargain at several different points. So I do think they would be disappointed. I think they would be upset. I think they want Celtic to be successful because, after all, if your thought is that they only care about Celtic for the money-making opportunities and the share prices and stuff, the better Celtic do on the pitch, the better Celtic do in Europe, the more money, the better their share price, etc., will be, the more money their shares will be worth, etc. So, well, all I'm quoting, and when I'm quoting the fact that the Major League Soccer is rated the 10th best league in the world, Opta Stats, whose professional job is to analyse football, quality of players, quality of games, etc., they put the American League at 10th. We're down, I think, down about 29 or something now. Obviously, the leagues who are rated above Major League Soccer are your Serie A's, your Ligue 1's, your Bundesliga, obviously the English Premiership, the English Championship is rated above Major League Soccer at number 7 or 8. I don't think Dermot Desmond was there tonight. I didn't see him. He doesn't actually turn up to many Celtic matches, which is another matter. Although not all chair people actually go to that many matches. Interestingly, just on a slight side topic, it does look like Tony Bloom, the Hearts major shareholder, may have got himself into massive problems in terms of a betting scandal. There's quite a lot of rumours going around Brighton, Union Saint-Gilloise and Hearts in terms of some jiggery-pokery with bets on games in those leagues and stuff. So I think that might be a story for another day. But I don't think Dermot Desmond was there tonight. I think it was the usual suspects. Nicholson, Mackay, Lawwell, etc. Probably Dermot Desmond's son. Yes, that's a good point. Actually, I should have thought that myself. Yes, obviously, I personally think if Lionel Messi was playing in Scottish football, he would be one of the best players by far in Scottish football. I think he would be ruling the roost. I think he would be a major influence. So if Celtic if we signed Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, I think we would have beaten Hearts no bother. We would have given Roma a really good game. So as I said, it's not me that says, well, it is me that's saying Major League Soccer are the 10th best league in the world, but it's actually based on stats of people whose job it is to analyze football. So opt to do all these incredible statistics, to do all these really incredibly clever analysis and predictions, and their predictions regarding how many points you need to do this, that, and the other is remarkably accurate. Yes, I thought the second half was much better. Some people are saying that's because Roma didn't try so hard in the second half. I don't personally think that. If Roma weren't trying in the second half, they wouldn't have brought on three or four of their other star players. So the thing always with Roma is they take off 3 or 4 internationals, they put on another 3 or 4 top quality internationals. So some of the best players in those particular countries, stars of their international sides, in terms of those players' own national sides, are on the bench. They come on and they're top quality players. I don't think Celtic has got that ability to bring on really top quality players, and I think that's partly due to the fact we're playing in Scotland, and it's really difficult to attract anybody to come and play football in Scotland. Which is why possibly a lot of the people that Nancy might well be looking at might be coming from leagues like Japan and Major League Soccer, in terms of the fact that it's probably quite reasonable to get players from those leagues to come and play in Scotland. And after all, some of Celtic's best players of recent years have come from Major League Soccer, Alza Johnston, or from the Japanese league, Maeda Kyogo and Hatate. Welcome to you, Pork Chop Express. I wish it was under happier, better circumstances. But so I think the first half was disappointing. They took their chances. We didn't take our chances. We didn't defend at all well, or Liam Scales in particular didn't defend at all well. I don't think personally that Chinecki is the answer as the left wing back. I think there are better options, whether we pop Scales or Tierney out to the left wing back position, whether we swap Yang to the left wing back position. Statistically against Hearts, as I said, based on the analysis made by Quinny on the Celts are here, he had a good game in lots of different ways against Hearts. He had a terrible game today, partly because I think he was up against a much more powerful fullback on playing tonight than he was against Hearts a few days ago. Dyson make a good point, Roy Jacobson. My personal feeling is I do wonder whether Dyson Maeda will get his move away in January if he's not playing well. If his form really takes a dip, just like Hatate's form has been very in and out. Certainly Dyson Maeda did seem to play that wee bit better in Martin O'Neill's system than he has so far in the Nancy system under Rodgers. Dyson Maeda was playing all over the place. He did seem to get much more of a role under O'Neill as the main striker. Well, if Pork Chop Express, you make a good point. It probably can't get much worse in terms of 2 defeats in a row. However, if we think about the 23-24 season under Brendan Rodgers, we had awful defeat to Kilmarnock. Straight after that, we had an awful defeat to Hearts. 2 defeats in a row. Then we played, I think it was Livingston. We had a decent performance against Livingston, won the game. We went into the end of 23, start of 24, pretty much level with Rangers. and came through in the second half of that season. I think if we were to lose to St Mirren on, just thought this might be a wee bit interesting. So it was just looking at where Celtic were at the end of the year, or sort of mid-season, let's say. Obviously, with a lot of these ones, there was a winter break, which there won't be this time around. But obviously, in 2016-17, 2017-18, we were miles ahead. 2018-19, we were level with Rangers. The next season, we were 2 points clear, having played one more game than Rangers at that point. Both those 2 seasons we came through to win. Then there was the awful season under Lennon and Kennedy, where we lost to Stephen Gerrard's Rangers by a mile. Then Ange Postecoglou's first season, 6 points behind at the end of 21, start of 2022. That was when there was actually a 3-week midwinter break, but we came back in the second half of the season. You then look at 23-24, that's the Rodgers season. We were 8 points clear, but we'd played 2 more games than Rangers. In the end, Rangers cut that gap down to 0, but then we had a particularly good last 2 or 3 months of the season, and I think we won 14 games out of 15 to end that season. So for me, there are parallels to other seasons. The one under Ange Postecoglou being the best one, 6 points behind going into the start of the next year. We came through to win that time. Ixie Pixie in 2018-19, 29-2020, again, Ixie Pixie. And even the Rodgers season, 23-24, we were 8 points clear, but we had played 2 games more. Rangers actually got those games in hand, cut the gap, took a lead. We cut it back. It was Ixie Pixie going into the last 2 or 3 months, and Celtic powered through to the title that season. So I think all these things are perfectly possible again this coming season. I do personally think that this form of football will work far better against St Mirren, probably actually better than the Martin O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers way of playing football against St Mirren. I don't think St Mirren's got the quality of defender, the quality of midfielder to keep up with the quick passing that Celtic managed in the first 30 minutes against Hearts. I don't think St Mirren have the quality of defenders to defend that pace of passing and pace of football. What we do require is somebody or 2 or 3 people who will take the chances that Maeda missed the last time and against Hearts, and that we missed in the first half of this game. Sorry, there's just so many comments, which is absolutely brilliant. I can't keep up with everything, so we'll just move through. But if you do want to make a comment again, I'll try and catch up with it second time around. Graham Martin, Dixie Deans was when I very first became a Celtic supporter, age 4 or 5, back in around about April, May 1971. Dixie Deans and Kenny Dalglish were 2 of my absolute favourite players. It just so happened that I'd seen Kenny Dalglish playing for a Celtic reserve side shortly before that. Then I saw the cup final, as I say, where Dixie Deans scored that hat-trick in a 6-1 win over Hibs. As I say, my dad's team was Hibs, so it was doubly good that my team beat his team. And Dixie Deans remained a big favourite of mine in the next 2 or 3 seasons. 124 goals in 184 matches, really pretty incredible goal-scoring level. Played with a smile on his face, played for fun, made football fun to watch. He did his forward rolls, he did his star jumps to celebrate the goals. I think he was a true Celtic great. And if anybody does want to get a reminder of the great Dixie Deans, there's a wee video on the channel from around about late October 2024, which has got some of his stats, analysis, and also got about 5 or 6 minutes of some of his goal highlights from his Celtic days. So if you do want a wee reminder of Dixie Deans, there is a video from about 14 months ago on the channel just to have a look at. So big, Dixie Deans, real big favourite of mine, and yes, yeah, really sad. It's one of it's probably the first Celtic game I remember. Say the first Celtic game I'd seen was a reserve game. Pretty sure it was Celtic against Queen's Park or something like that. But the first game I saw properly live on TV was Celtic against Hibs in that cup final in May 1971. Well, yep, we've had a wee chat about this earlier on, Noah Patsy 10. I personally don't think that Roma took their foot off the gas in the second half. If that's the case, they wouldn't have put on all those 3 or 4 really top quality international players. They had other players on the bench they could have brought on. They did keep on the attack in the second half. Bailey had a goal disallowed. Schmeichel made a couple of good saves in the second half. Celtic had to defend in the second half. I think Celtic actually played better in the second half because Celtic played better in the second half. I don't think Celtic quite. I think part of that was Iheanacho being able to keep the ball up the other end better. I think he was a much better out ball. It was quite clear. There were numerous times that Schmeichel and the defenders were looking for somebody to put the ball up to. Nygren was no good at holding the ball up. Dyson might have lost the ball several times. There was a bit of progress when we got the ball out to Chuniecki on the left, but unfortunately his delivery into the box wasn't good enough. Yes, so quite right, Jacobson. So Nancy took the Columbus Crew to the equivalent of the Champions League in Major League Soccer. The Mexican League, which was one of the strong leagues in that group, is a very strong league, stronger than the Scottish League for total quality. Yes. I would personally. I think Iheanacho's got to start. I think there's an argument to say that playing Trusty centrally as the middle centre back and somebody different at right centre back, whether it's swapping Tierney from left to right, that's one option. Whether it's using Donovan or Ralston as the right centre back, that's another option. Very interesting theory someone put forward on another channel was using a player like a Paulo Bernardo or a Arne Engels as the right-sided centre-back, particularly against a team who only plays one striker. St Mirren often plays 2 strikers, so probably better to have 3 defensive centre-backs. I think the real thing also was, tonight also was that Roma have got 3 central defenders who are all really good, strong defenders. They also were pretty sneaky with the shirt pulls, the trips and the holding, etc. But also those players were quite comfortable coming forward into midfield, coming forward even into the final third at times. So I think Clashman Numpties was saying there, yes, we can't really have it both ways. So the first half we blame on Nancy. Second half we say it's because Roma weren't trying. I don't think. I think as soon as you stop trying when you're playing football or doing anything in life, you're it's a really stupid thing, because often if you stop trying, it's very hard to get yourself back up for it. I don't think Roma took their foot off the gas in the second half. Celtic played better in the first half. They did a lot of the things that Roma did to Celtic in the first half. Celtic did to Roma in the second half. We were much better at stopping them getting the ball out of their defence. I think we pressurised them far better. That's partly down to Iheanacho being much better, actually physically confronting those players. I think Yang, Donovan, Ralston, Chinecki on the other side, Nygren, Hattati, Engels, I think all of them pushed up far better in the second half to close that space down, close the space down in midfield. It was a wee bit similar to how we played against Hearts in the first half hour. We gave Hearts no space to get the ball out of their defence. So it took 27 minutes for Hearts to get their ball out of their half. So I think actually it was the players played far better. I think Nancy got them pushed further up, and it did a lot of the things that Roma did to Celtic in the first half, Celtic did to Roma in the second half, which made it much more difficult. Yes, I Pope Leo the 14, no, that's 14, Pope 1426. Yes, I thought it was maybe just me, but it did sound like all we could hear was Roma supporters chanting and shouting, etc. They are quite a noisy, rowdy bunch themselves. They do have, actually, their fans do have quite a bad reputation. It may be that the fans who've got a bad reputation didn't travel with them. I don't know. It is really, really sad. I hate that Celtic is a club that's fighting with each other at the moment, or fighting within itself at the moment. And I think, as I've said on previous live streams, I think there's very strongly fault on both sides. And I do think that for the sake of Celtic, both sides are going to have to meet in the middle, shake hands, let bygones be bygones, and move forward. It's much like a painful divorce or a painful fight within your family. Sometimes when you've got problems at work, problems at home, relationships, fighting with your kids, etc., fighting with your brothers and sisters, sometimes it's a question of having a clear the air talks, all sitting down and sit down and let bygones be bygones, move forward, and all go in the right direction for Celtic. So I do. Sorry, there's so many comments, which is absolutely brilliant. I just can't keep up with them, which is great. But I will get around to them as quick as I can. You make a good point there. It's one of these things which some people you might say is a chicken and the egg. Kasper Schmeichel's passing wasn't very good for the most part tonight. I think he was really struggling to get anybody to make a good run. I think the people who were supposed to be getting themselves into space and holding up the ball were Maeda and Nygren and Hattati. They weren't doing that. Roma were pressurising Celtic's back three and Schmeichel so incredibly well. It was really cutting down space. Probably in that situation, players like McGregor, Engels should drop deeper. The two wide players should drop deeper. That way there are more people to pass to. And I think, as we've said before, I think it's a question of Celtic making the right decisions at the right time. But I personally would not be averse to Sinisalo being the goalkeeper on Sunday against St Mirren, giving Kasper Schmeichel a couple of weeks off, maybe to regather his thoughts, make a decision. In his case, I do think that Schmeichel's confidence is down a bit this season, particularly just recently. He obviously made a big error against Braga. There's been several goals over the course of the season where he's very much been at fault. I think he could have done far better for the first Hearts goal and for the second Hearts goal. I don't think he takes control of his box as well as he should do. I think Sinisal is a bit better at taking control of his box. Graham Martin. I think Callum McGregor obviously stays. I'm torn between whether it should be Engels or Hatate. I think probably Engels works better in the system. I think Engels has got a much better engine for getting up and down the pitch. So my personal feeling would be keeping Engels and keeping Callum McGregor, and then looking to change the two attacking midfielders, making one or two changes for the wide midfielders, and I would go with Iheanacho up front. I personally wouldn't drop Maeda, but I would put Maeda to either the wide left position or as one of the two attacking midfielders behind Iheanacho. That's a good. The strange thing is, I was reading before the game that again these are just rumors that you've got no idea whether they're true or not. But there were quite strong rumors that Celtic were talking with Roma, and Roma were talking with Brighton as to whether Roma would cut short Ferguson's loan deal at Christmas, send him back to Brighton, who'd then send him to Celtic. Now, there were rumours that Evan Ferguson was lined up to come to Celtic previously on loan. He ended up going, obviously, to Roma instead. I do suspect that having scored 2 goals and playing actually very, very, very well for the first 60 minutes, it's going to give Ferguson more of a chance to stay at Roma. I think Roma's got one of these deals with Brighton that they can, they've got one loan for the season, they can cut it short, and at the end of the season there's a price tag which is not compulsory, so they can decide to buy him or not buy him. It's not one of these when there's a compulsory purchase at the end of it. Yes, no one's really mentioned that so far, Port Trop Express, but I think that's also something that Celtic are going to, and as was the case under Ange Postecoglou. Ange Postecoglou's never stopped philosophy did require the players to get stronger and stronger, fitter and fitter. And it's no coincidence that one of the people that has been the key to Wilfried Nancy's success at Montreal and then at Columbus Crew is the fitness coach that he's brought in with him. The fitness coach is also a qualified psychologist. He's got college degrees and university degrees in 3 or 4 different sports-related and psychology-related matters. He's an ex-professional footballer. He's got a coaching license for coaching as well. So I do agree that fitness is part of it. I think also part of it is the Roma players were far more comfortable playing the ball quickly, passing quickly, moving into space quickly. Because Roma's been playing this way of football for 3 or 4 years, playing a variation on a 3-4-3 for 3 or 4 years. So even though their current manager came in at the start of the season, he kept the same formation, the same way of playing that the 2 predecessors had played. Interestingly, I think what I heard on the commentary was their previous manager had moved from being manager to being a director of football. It was something that was obviously proposed with Martin O'Neill moving upstairs. Don't think Martin O'Neill wanted to stay at Celtic any longer than the end of the international window. I think he was a bit surprised that he was still there for a couple more games. And as I said, if the Scottish government and the British government had got the work permits through and the visas through for Nancy and the 2 French-Canadian coaches, I'm pretty sure O'Neill would have been back down south to London to do his radio work and his TV work. It's no coincidence, almost as soon as O'Neill went down south, having done his last game with Celtic and doing the handover to Nancy, he was straight into doing punditry work for, I think it was American television, certainly international television. So, yes, I think Cal McGregor was disappointing. I thought he had a better game against Hearts than he did against Roma. I think Roma dominated midfield. They dominated midfield. It stifled Celtic in midfield. We couldn't get the ball forward. We couldn't get the ball out our defensive third in the first half, particularly. And as someone was saying that on, we get no point. You get no points at all for nearlies. You get no points for ifs and buts. And this could have happened and that could have happened. The key to all football games is putting away your chances, as Hearts showed on Sunday and as Roma showed today. They were much more efficient at putting their chances away. So just people want to have a wee look. So these were the stats for the game. If you look at the stats, you go, oh, right, well, Celtic had 57% of the possession to 43 for Roma. Shots were only 12-9 in favour of Roma, so that's not a big difference. 5-2 on targets, that's significant. They had pretty much half of their shots were on target. A quarter of our shots were on target. Off targets, 5 each. Schmeichel made 3 saves. Their goalkeeper made 2 saves. 4 corners to each team, so that's pretty equal. 21 touches for Celtic in their box, 24 for Roma. So again, what it shows is when they got the ball into our box, they made it count. They put 3 chances in the goal. They forced Schmeichel into 3 saves. Clearances. The fact that Roma made 20 clearances again does show that Celtic were in and around their box, making chances, but not making that final good pass. When we did get the ball into the box, Hatate put it over the bar. A couple of times we had crosses got blocked out for corners. We got a penalty when Engels was pulled down, having got into the box. Second half, Iheanacho a yard offside. He had no need to be offside, much like against Hibs earlier in the season. Didn't need to be so far forward. He would have still scored had he kept himself onside, because he would have been completely clear. That might be true. I say nobody knows whether that's true or not. My understanding was Roma came in and offered Ferguson to go off and play for Roma, and a lot of people would choose to go and play for one of the best teams in Italy, rather than coming to play in Scottish football. But it may be that Celtic refused to pay Evan Ferguson's wages. I don't know. All the stories that one hears from supposed insiders who claim to know what are talking about, 9 times out of 10, in my way of reading things, they're just as wrong as tossing a coin and saying, is it head or is it tails? I don't think so. There are people who said that was the reason that Celtic didn't get Ferguson on loan. Other interpretation was that Roma came in for him and he chose to go to Roma rather than come and play for Celtic. Just try and catch up with these comments. As I've said many times, I believe that Celtic will win the title. I believe that Celtic will get a double or treble this season. I don't think Hearts have got the quality in their team, their squad, to keep this going for the rest of the season. Don't think Hibs, Rangers, Motherwell have got the quality to mount a concerted push for the title. I think Celtic's got better players. I think Celtic will get even more players in to fill the gaps in January. I think, obviously, Nancy will bring in players more suited to the 3-4-2-1, the 3-4-3 formation. I think in the winter window, we probably will lose 2 or 3 of the players that we've got. Dyson Maida being probably the biggest example. However, if we do sell Dyson Maida, we're liable to get £20 million, £25 million. And if we are shopping in the J League or shopping in MLS, shopping in the smaller leagues in Europe, we're going to get in several really high quality players for lower fees, because the fees from those leagues are much more sensible. If you're trying to buy a player from the English Championship, you think of a number and then you treble it. If you think you're trying to buy a player from the English Premiership, you think of a number and you multiply it by 5. You think about a player like Fabio Silva that Rangers had on loan a couple of years ago. He was a player who was valued at 30 million, 35 million. If I was going to buy Fabio Silva, I would be spending a couple of million on him. That's the quality of player he was. However, because he was an English Premiership player, suddenly the price tag goes up massively. Yes. I would. The reason if I was a player coming to play, I would want personally to come and play. If all the options of all the teams in Scotland, Celtic would be the one that I would want to go to, because Celtic have won the league 13 out of the last 14 years. Over those 15 years or so, it's been doubles and trebles non-stop. So if I was going to choose any team to come and play for in Scotland, I would choose to come and play for Celtic, because Celtic are winners and have won every year apart from one in recent years. Do agree though that people don't want to come and play in Scotland. We are in essence, if we're talking about global leagues, we're a second division team, a league. We're not a top division team league as a whole. The money in Scottish football is poor. The TV money is poor in Scotland. Sponsorship poor in Scotland. The prestige of Scottish football has gone down massively, which is why the UEFA coefficient for Scottish clubs is probably near enough an all-time low. Possibly one could say that because all the other teams in Scotland are so poor, that Celtic maybe have had a bit of an easy street, not having to play as brilliantly as they could have done, but still winning doubles and trebles. That's certainly one argument. I wouldn't disagree with that argument. But the reason for coming to play for Celtic or to play in Scotland is a stepping in nowadays, and for the last 10, 20 years, it's a stepping stone to the bigger, richer leagues. It's the stepping stone to go and play for English Premiership, French Ligue 1, Serie A, etc. So, particularly moving from Scotland to England, tons and tons of players came to Celtic within 2 or 3 seasons, like Virgil van Dijk, Odsonne Edouard, Moussa Dembele, etc. They've moved on to a bigger and better, richer league, much higher prestige league. Yes, I do think it's some of the reaction to the Hearts defeat, the fact that he wore green trainers, the fact that he used his little tactics board. I think it was all just ex-Rangers players, Rangers' favourite journalists, Hearts' favourite players and journalists, desperate to give Celtic a good kicking when they could, and by goodness, did lots and lots of people give Celtic a good kicking after the Hearts game. What colour of trainers somebody wears is completely immaterial. I think actually the use of the tactics board is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Now, some teams use like an iPad type of thing. Some teams use handwritten charts or computerized printed charts for getting tactics over. I think the little magnetic whiteboards are a perfectly reasonable way of quickly getting over your tactical changes. And after all, against Hearts, the changes he made to the tactics and did actually give Celtic in the last 10 minutes some good chances to get themselves back into the game against Hearts. So, I think it did help players like McGregor and Tierney especially appreciate what their role was supposed to be. So I've got no problem with the magnetic board. And I think it's ridiculous criticising someone for wearing green trainers or green football boots, because after all, players wear all colours of football boots. So I think it's just people were desperate to give Celtic a good kicking when they had the chance. So that's why the Ali McCoys and the Chris Boyds and the Ryan Stevensons and the Michael Stewarts and so on and so on and so on laid into them, and a few ex-Celtic players also laid into Celtic, which I don't think is a particularly good thing to do. I think it's much better if you're an ex-Celtic player that you're loyal to Celtic. However, some ex-Celtic players chose not to, which is perfectly fine. It's their choice to support the club or not support the club. Well, it's a. I don't honestly think that had Celtic been playing a back three, a back four, a back five tonight against Roma, that it would have made any difference. I think playing a 3-4-3 is a perfectly reasonable way to take on Roma. It was actually matching them formation for formation, player for player. I think just they had better players in all those positions than Celtic did. I think if Celtic had played 4 at the back, 5 at the back, whatever they played at the back, Roma would have cut us open, just like Michelin cut us open when we were playing 4 at the back, just like Dortmund opened us up when we were playing 4 at the back under Rodgers, just like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico, so many other teams opened us up because they had better quality of players. So I don't think the 3 at the back, 4 at the back, 5 at the back would make any difference. I think it's because they had better quality of players. They created spaces better. They used the spaces better. They used their chances better. Well, it's not true, Brian O'Rourke. 11. Nancy has played in Major League Soccer. He has played with a back 4. He has played with a back 5. He prefers to play with a back 3. But several times last season and the season before in Major League Soccer, he did drop to playing a 4-4-2, a 4-3-3. He actually is very flexible with these formations when he thinks that it's the better formation to play. He doesn't play a back 4 nearly as much as he plays a back 3. But he does drop to a back 4. He does drop to a back 5 when he thinks it suits his players, or particularly doesn't suit the opposition if his team has got 4 at the back or 5 at the back. I think certainly against Hearts, Tierney looked far better as the left centre back. I think Liam Scales is struggling to cope with the system. I think Austin Trusty is defending well in this system. His passing is not as good as it should be. I thought Donovan and Ralston looked pretty good on the right-hand side. I think Tuneki isn't the answer on the left-hand side. So those would be positions where I would be. Fine. The only reason that I'm saying this is because I had a look on thing called SofaScore. SofaScore is a football rating site that shows you who played, what the formation was, what the subs were, what the players got out of 10 for a rating, what their passing was, what their shooting was, etc., etc. And it's maybe about 80% or so Nancy plays a back 3, 5% he plays a back 5, 5% he plays a 4-4-2, etc. But you're entirely right. The massive majority of his games he plays with a 3. But there were 2 or 3 teams in Major League Soccer where he would drop into a 5 or a drop into a 4 at the back, simply to counteract what the other team's strengths were. Nowadays, so many teams play with just one central striker up the top of the pitch. to be fair, actually, Roma played with Evan Ferguson right at the top of the pitch. They then got their attacking midfielders and their central midfielders and their wide players much better in to support Ferguson. So more often than not, Roma were attacking with 4, 5, 6 players. Celtic didn't really get enough players in the box, partly because Roma had us so much on the back foot. So Nancy does play back three nearly all the time, but he does swap from time to time into those other formations. Thank you, Kegler Moon. It's not. I haven't actually watched the huddle breakdown. The one I tend to watch all the time now is the Celts Are Here with Quinny, because I find his analysis of football very interesting. He's always got very good stats and very good player analysis type things. He seems to have this really good system that says what all these different players. There are an awful lot of Celtic channels out there. I do my best to do the best I can with my channel. I haven't got the resources. I'm not a professional. I haven't had any training in this. I'm just doing the best I can as a fan. Yes, I think once the Nancy tactics get bedded down, once the players get fully committed to these tactics, I think it is going much as it was with Ange Postecoglou. I think it's going to give all the other Scottish teams too many problems that they won't know how to solve. But it's going to take a bit of time for that to happen. I think, as I said earlier on, having your first 2 games being against the number 1 team in Scotland in terms of performances and consistency in your first game, not ideal. It was a game that we could have and should have won. But we didn't take our chances. Hearts took their chances. Playing against the 3rd best team in Italy, a team that could easily win the Italian Serie A by the end of the season. Thank you. No, Kegler Moon. No, I'm very, very grateful. You watch the channel, you contribute to the live streams, you put great comments into the comment sections. No, I am just simply saying that there are lots of professional channels out there. I'm just an enthusiastic amateur, and as I said, I really, really do appreciate everybody who contributes to the live stream. I can really, really massively thank everybody who takes part in the live streams, puts comments into the comment section, watches the videos. I'm still learning how to do things better and better. Not as clever as the Quinnies and the huddle breakdowns and so on. I'm afraid, Clashman Lumpty, I've got no idea what the fantasy channel is, but it sounds like the kind of that certainly. I think once Celtic do get used to this system, much like it was under Ange Postecoglou, things are going to get better. It's a wee bit similar, maybe to. Yes, and that I really that's the way. That's one of the reasons I've supported Celtic since May 1971. Is because Celtic seemed like a family club. It seemed like everybody was together, no matter your religion, your skin color, etc., etc. You were accepted as a Celtic fan. And for the most part, obviously things in the 80s and 90s were pretty dodgy behind the scenes at Celtic. Celtic got in the 80s and 90s, got themselves deeper and deeper into debt. We weren't winning things on the pitch. Then in 1994, we were within hours, days, a week or two of gone completely out of business, whether we would have been bailed out the way that Rangers got bailed out, the way that Hearts got bailed out, I don't know. But certainly until Fergus McCann took over the club and wiped out all the debts and paid for a brand new stand, etc., Celtic were in really, really dire straits. We then made a couple of good managerial appointments. Wim Jansen took us to the title. He then mysteriously left straight away. Then 2000, we brought in Martin O'Neill. And the rest is history. The next 25 years since we brought in Martin O'Neill first time around, we've been winning doubles and trebles almost non-stop. Then we had a wee bit of a spell where Rangers were winning some titles, we were winning some titles, and then the last 14 years it's been 13 out of 14 titles, and with those 13 titles it's been League Cups and Scottish Cups and so on and so on. So I do really hope that Celtic as a family can get back together. But for Celtic to get back together, I think there's going to have to be people on both sides letting bygones be bygones, and living and finding a way to live together. Yep. I fully hear what you're saying. I find his press conferences and his interviews interesting. I think he thinks of football differently. He's a much more philosophical person. I think he's got some interesting theories. I think part of the slight difficulty with interpreting Wilfried Nancy's statements is he's saying it in his second language. I think he's got really excellent English. I think he's got a really good command of the language. I think he's got some brilliant ideas. He is a coach, a person who devises training schedules that are very, very highly rated in terms of FIFA. Has been used often as doing coaching sessions to train other coaches who are going through all their licenses and badges and stuff. So he's a very, very innovative coach. He's a very forward-thinking coach. I think his schemes are going to work for Celtic, but he's now been, I think, the Celtic head coach. For 7 days. He obviously came in. He got announced on the Wednesday evening. He then came in, took his first training sessions on the Friday. So he's had maybe 3 or 4 training sessions with the players, a couple of talking sessions with the players. We've obviously had a disappointing result tonight, a disappointing result against Hearts on Sunday. After both games, the players get a day off. Yes, I think. Well, if you think about the fact that Wilfried Nancy is born and brought up in France, moved across to Canada, living in the French-speaking part of Canada, he speaks French as his first language. If anybody's ever gone abroad on a holiday, let's say to France or Italy or whatever, and you try and speak French and Italian, I always think of what I'm going to say in English first, then translate it in my head into French. He's trying to, or Italian or whatever. And at the moment, he's still thinking in French in his head and then saying the words in English. So I think there is going to be a wee bit of him thinking for a few seconds before he talks. So just moving things on. So, oops. Just moving things on. I'm actually full of hope and full of expectation that Sunday is going to go very, very well. So I'm actually full of hope for Sunday. So, but Eddie, I fully understand what you're saying. I think things are going to go well on Sunday. I think Celtic's got an awful lot more quality than St Mirren. I think the way that Nancy's going to set the team up to play against St Mirren on Sunday is going to work better than it did against Roma, simply because the quality that Roma had in every position was 10, 20% better than Celtic had in all those positions. I would be surprised in terms of if I was thinking of it simply as a football manager. So if you ever play the computer games, the FIFA games, or the Championship Manager, Football Manager computer games, you generally try and not change your team terribly much. However, assuming that all the players are training equally hard and buying into the system, I personally would change 2 or 3 of the positions. I'm not convinced that Chineki is working as the wide left player. I'm not convinced that Maeda's working as the main striker position. I think Maeda might work far better as the left wing back position, which is what he does for Japan. Or as one of the attacking midfielders playing behind Iheanacho. I would guess that Scales' confidence is pretty low, both from the Hearts match when he played okay, but he played very, very poorly, very, very poorly tonight. I'm not saying I'm not on edge for Sunday. I'm just, and if for those who followed the channel since it started 2 and a bit years ago, I do tend to be optimistic. I do tend to always think on the bright side of life. However, having supported Celtic in the miserable years of the 80s and 90s when we were coming second in league, third in league, even fourth in league, where Rangers were better than us, Dundee United were better than us, Aberdeen were better than us. We went through about 10 years where we hardly won anything at all. So I stuck with Celtic through thick and thin. And for that reason, particularly because the last 25 years have been so brilliant for Celtic, but particularly the last, 13, 14 years, apart from that one season where Neil Lennon kind of took his eye off the ball. I think it was similar to, the way that Celtic were in that season, which was 2020, 2021, is quite similar to how Celtic were at the start of this season. I think the squad was rather stale. Lennon didn't add quality players to the squad in that year. Rodgers and the board and whoever else didn't add good enough quality players to the squad. But also what I think is the players who were already at the club back then and now, they haven't stepped up to help the new players come in. Very often when you add new players to a squad, to a team, it takes them a few weeks, a few months, etc., to really get used to Scottish football, living in Scotland, all these kind of things, which is why when Ange Postecoglou made so many changes to his team in 21-22, luckily some of Celtic's existing players stepped up. Some players like Ralston got a second life. Ralston was particularly strong in the first half of that season. So Yes, so I think all of us, and most of us, have been Celtic supporters through good days and bad days, some good years and bad years. There have been, obviously, in virtually every season recently, there's been spells where we've lost a couple of games, played very poorly. As I said, about 2 years ago in Rodgers' first season, second time around, we had the Kilmarnock 2-1 defeat, which was awful. Then we followed that the next game with a 2-0 defeat to Hearts at Celtic Park, another awful performance. I think that the way that things were managed when things were going downhill under Brendan Rodgers, on the pitch and off the pitch, I think things could have been done far, far better. I think also my personal feeling, as I mentioned before, is that I think Celtic should have got some kind of certainty about what Rodgers' intentions were at the start of the season. He kind of hummed and hawed. The story was that there was a big contract on the table for him to carry on. I think that would have given the board an awful lot more confidence to invest in Rodgers in the summer transfer window if they knew that he was going to be the manager for the rest of the season and the next 2 or 3 years after that. Rodgers refused to sign a contract in the summer. He was postponing signing a new contract till next May. That's not really good for continuity. It's not really good for an investment if you're not sure who the manager is going to be in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, etc. It's also worthwhile mentioning. You're entirely right. If we think about that 23-24 season, we lost to Hearts 2-0 at Celtic Park. We then lost. It was 2-0 at Tynecastle. Kind of that 2-0 loss at Tynecastle was the result that kick-started the comeback that season. I don't think after that 2-0 loss to Hearts at Tynecastle, I don't think Celtic lost again that season. Pretty sure we went on a 14 wins out of 15 for the rest of that season. I think winning Graham Martin, I think it's a brilliant point. I think winning the League Cup on Sunday would be a massive boost to the confidence of Nancy, the players, the fans, the board, the executives, everybody behind the scenes. I think much like in the Ange Postecoglou days or under the Martin O'Neill days, first time around and second time around, quite often it takes a bit of luck, a good result, something really positive, and suddenly the season gets kick-started. Martin O'Neill, second time around, came in straight away. We won a couple of games 4-0. We then had the Rangers game 3-1. In the Rangers 3-1 game, the League Cup semi-final, there were times where Celtic didn't play that well. Rangers got back into the game. There's an argument to say that Trusty should have been sent off. I didn't think it was bad enough to get sent off, but on another day, VAR and the referee decides that Trusty's little flick on Buckland's head is a red card offence. Suddenly, Celtic and Rangers, it's 10 against 10. Sometimes in football, you have a bit of luck, a bit of something goes your way, a bit of a dodgy refereeing decision, a dodgy VAR decision. Several of Hearts' games early in the season, they've had some dodgy VARs go in their favour. If you think about their game against St Mirren, St Mirren had a perfectly good goal disallowed. If you think about when they beat the Rangers at Ibrox, they got a dodgy penalty in their favour. They had a penalty not given against them that probably should have been given against them. They had a goal disallowed. Rangers had a goal disallowed that probably shouldn't have been disallowed. So sometimes in football and in life, it's getting a bit of luck, but then what's most important, taking advantage of that bit of luck. We had the chance to get back into the game just before half time, and Nancy missed the penalty. Who knows what the second half would have held had Engels got that goal? Who knows what would have happened had Tatati put that ball into the net when we were 2-0 down? Maybe he would have come back dramatically. We have had, over the years, over the 50-odd years of being a Celtic supporter, we have had games where we've come back from being a goal or two down. It just did feel against Hearts on Sunday and tonight, we gave away a bad goal and the whole team got deflated and the whole crowd got deflated as well. That's a good point, VZ Ice. Roma are the best team I've seen at all this season. Notwithstanding when I've watched Champions League games, but Roma are the best team I've seen playing against Celtic. Roma are the best team I've seen playing in the Europa League. Their performance to beat Michelin 2-1, their performance tonight to beat Celtic 3-0 away from home. Their Europa League performances have got better and better game by game by game. They had a bit of a dodgy, inconsistent start. They lost a couple of home games. Their away form actually has been far better in Italian football and in Europa League than their home form has been at times. I think there's an argument that Robbie Keane certainly wasn't ruling out becoming Celtic's manager in the future. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Ireland manager and the Wales manager, and possibly also the Northern Ireland manager if they don't win their playoffs for the World Cup later on next year. It wouldn't surprise me in the least bit that if not 2 or 3 out of Ireland, Wales and Northern Ireland don't, their manager either resigns and moves on or gets sacked. It's maybe a wee bit harsh, having got themselves into the playoffs, that they lose their job. But often with things like the European nations and the World Cup being a 2-year cycle, it's often better to restart. Also, I think that's probably going to be the case with Scotland. I think Scotland will be looking for a new international manager in the summer as well after the World Cup. Yes, so I think we've actually played. I haven't got the Europa League table in front of me at the moment, but I can certainly look it up. I think we've actually played some of the best teams in the Europa League. We've had the fortune or misfortune to have played them so far this season. I think Roma look a very, very good side. I think Michelin look a really, really good side. The thing about Roma's side and Michelin's side is they've had quite a lot of continuity in terms of their playing staff, not so much their managerial staff, but their coaching staff has been really quite consistent. Their playing staff has actually been quite consistent, and both Michelin and Roma have done a very good job of just building on and building on and building on their squad and their team, making it better and better and better every transfer window, which, as we all know, Celtic haven't done particularly recently. Yeah, so if we look at if we're looking at the current Europa League table, we've got Michelin, who got beaten by 3-1. They're currently lying second. Braga are lying seventh, and Roma are now lying 10th. So we've played 3 of the top 10, and we've been defeated by all of them. We beat Sturm Graz, we beat Feyenoord, we drew with Red Star Belgrade. So in essence, we've actually Sturm Graz are 29th, Feyenoord are 30th, and Red Star are 17th. Celtic are currently 24th. So we've actually beaten the teams who are worse than us and lost to the teams who are better than us. I think Roma, for me, looks stronger than Braga, stronger than Midtjylland, but I thought Midtjylland were a very, very well organised team. They were very consistent. I say their team has been together for a long time, adding players on and on and on, and much the same with Roma as well. Yes. So I think Roma have every chance of going and winning this competition, which of course gets them into next year's Champions League. I think there's for me it swings and roundabouts. Brian O'Rourke. I think if we think about it, Celtic were given a gilt-edged chance to get themselves into the Champions League. We had to beat Kairat Almaty at home, and then and we had the chances, particularly that last-minute chance from Dyson Maida to win that game. Same across in Almaty, we had every chance to win that game in normal time. Again, Dyson Maida cleaned through on goal. In the away game and the home game, the Almaty goalkeepers made a couple of saves, but we had much the better players to beat Almaty in both those legs, certainly the home leg, and we didn't for one reason or another. And I think a lot of that was down to the players were demoralised, demotivated, they were stale, they weren't enjoying playing football. Also, we could have and should have added more players to the squad, and we didn't. And the players who were new to the team, a lot of them didn't really perform in those games. And a lot of the players who were pre-existing players, the McGregors, the Hattati, the Maidas, etc., they didn't perform either. So it was a combination of the players we had already didn't perform, and the new players didn't come in and perform either. You make a good point, Breezy Eyes. I think Kairat Almaty, now admittedly they're down towards the bottom of the Champions League at the moment, but it's not as if they've been massively outclassed by anybody. They've not been totally humiliated by anybody. Remembering, obviously, last season we got humiliated. I think it was 7-1 by 6 or 7-1 by Dortmund early in the competition. Admittedly, that time around we did fight back and got ourselves into the knockout phase with some really good performances, such as beating Bayer Leverkusen, the away draw in Bergamo against Atlanta. Yes, we have missed Nicholas Kuhn this season. I'm not disputing that in the least bit. However, Nicholas Kuhn made it very, 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 very clear in the January transfer window that he wasn't going to stay at Celtic any longer, and he was going to be moving in the summer one way or another. I think one of the things that I do agree with Brendan Rodgers, when a player decides he wants to leave a club, there's not much point in making them stay much longer. Kyogo's performance in his last season for Celtic really took a dip in the half season he was with us. He was desperate to leave Celtic from that summer. Dyson Maida's performances this season have been rather inconsistent, certainly a lot poorer than last season's. He basically put in a transfer request in the summer. Rodgers and the board didn't let him leave the club. He hasn't really performed at his best since that time. So Kuhn made it very clear in the January window that he was leaving Celtic in the summer. Matt O'Reilly was much the same. A lot of offers came in for him in the January window before he was sold in the summer window. Not convinced keeping a player at the club once they've decided they want to leave is a good idea. We think about people like Christopher Ayer and Odsonne Edwards. They were kind of forced to stay at Celtic an extra 6 to 12 months. They didn't really perform at all for Neil Lennon or John Kennedy in their last seasons. And then they got moved on. Ryan Christie, another player who was desperate to leave, and in the end, Ange Postecoglou let him leave. So yes, so I think there was an attempt to bring in people to replace him, and they haven't really worked. But remembering also when Nicholas Kuhn came in the January transfer window, for the first, certainly the first several weeks, he was very inconsistent. However, once he got buried down into the Celtic system towards the end of the season, but particularly in the first half of last season, he really came good. But it took him a bit of time to get into the Celtic team. I think of all the players that Celtic haven't got, the two that would really, really have made a difference against Kierat Almaty, had he not got injured against Kierat Almaty after about half an hour. Alistair Johnston, massive loss for me. I think also Jota, I think he was getting better and better. Again, he came in last January transfer window. He really wasn't playing particularly well to start with. However, he was showing little flashes of brilliance. He was scoring goals. He was creating goals, but he was rather inconsistent. I think he was getting better and better. Then he gets himself injured. He's out for probably about a year or so. He should hopefully be coming back early in the new year. I think he would work really, really well in this particular team. I think Alistair Johnston would work really, really well as the right centre-back. He would work really, really well as the right wing-back. I think you could have him alternating between those two positions. Well, as I said before, I can't see any reason that Wilfried Nancy and Kwame Ampadu and the other two coaches would have come across the Atlantic, moved their family, their kids, their wives, their spouses, etc., across from a very, very safe job. There's no way that Columbus Crew would be sacking Nancy and his coaching staff, because they had brought great success to a small club with quite a small budget in terms of Major League Soccer. So he had a job for the next 2 or 3 years guaranteed at Columbus Crew. So I can't see him choosing to come to Celtic unless he was guaranteed. I think if I was going to play Jota in the current system, I would have him as one of the two free floating attacking midfielders behind the main striker, having him going wide to the left, wide to the right, going through the middle. I don't think he has to play as a conventional winger. Don't think he would work terribly well as one of the wing backs. If we're going to play Jota as a wide player, I think we would have to have someone as a much more defensive left-sided midfielder or right-sided midfielder behind him. But my personal feeling is, if I was playing Jota in this current system, I would have him as one of the two behind the main striker, which is why I think actually Maeda would work better in those positions as well. I think Celtic's system will be better than Hearts. One of the key people that Nancy brought across with him from Columbus Crew is his analyst specialist. So in essence, someone was saying a wee bit earlier on that Celtic needed to play this system. They needed to be fitter and faster and stronger. That's why you bring across a fitness coach. For improving the players, you need a proper football coach who's also an analyst. I think Celtic already do have a scouting system. the scouting system was good enough to bring in players like Maeda, Johnston, O'Reilly, Kyogo, etc., etc., etc. Recently, it's been rather inconsistent. It did strike me that when we moved from Postecoglou's staff to Rodgers' staff, that things took a big downhill turn in terms of our scouting and recruitment. Whether that was down to Rodgers, whether that's down to people internally at Celtic, I don't know. Certainly, very quickly after Rodgers came in, two of the people who'd been part of Postecoglou's team were kicked out by Rodgers, and he brought in his own mates to fill those roles. He then brought in Tidsdale to fill whatever role Tidsdale plays at the club. So, to cut a long story short, Clashman Numpty, yes. As I said, I can't see why Nancy would agree to come across to Scotland with his coaching staff. I don't see why Celtic would commit however many millions of dollars and pounds it's taken to bring Nancy and the other three into the club. I think Celtic are going to commit money to Nancy and his players in the winter. I think also it's almost certain that Maeda will be going. That's going to add another 20 million pounds or whatever to the transfer kitty. I think that's going to be used to reinvest. The question is going to be whether Nancy can convince players to come and play for Celtic with the way that things are for Celtic at the moment on the pitch, but possibly even more importantly off the pitch. I think you're going to need somebody who is good at encouraging players to come to a club. Whether Nancy has the gift of the gab, I don't know. Whether that's maybe a role for Martin O'Neill to be brought in for as a sort of director of football, sort of as a club ambassador type of thing. Well, as I said, so we're all entitled to our opinions. There, over several transfer windows, Celtic have committed a lot of cash to buy players. We think about Rodgers' second season, his second summer transfer window. We spent 11 million on Engels, 9 million on Ida, 6 million on Trusty, 4 million on Bernardo. We spent money on McCowan. We spent money on other players. We spent lots of money to bring in other players on loan. Now, admittedly, when we brought all those players in, we also sold some players and sort of balanced the books. But however, there was a massive, massive amount of money spent in the summer of 24-25. Now, those players, for the most part, haven't really done a brilliant job for Celtic. Engels has kind of been in and out the team. Ida's obviously moved on. Trusty kind of in and out the team now. Admittedly, he was injured at a couple of points last season and at this season. He now seems to be, now that Carter Vickers is injured, he seems to be one of the Celtic's first choice centre-backs. The other thing one has to look at is maybe the board hasn't been spending absolute fortunes in terms of transfers, but they have spent massive amounts of money in giving the players who Celtic do have big contracts to keep them loyal to the club. So players like McGregor, Carter Vickers were given big contracts. Hatate, Maeda, O'Reilly were all given big contracts to keep them at the club a bit longer. Tierney was given a big contract to come back to play for Celtic. Jota was given a big contract to come back and play for Celtic. Tierney we got for nothing. Jota we bought for about 8 million. So maybe the transfer fees haven't been massive. There's been a degree of balance in the books, selling a player and bringing in more players. However, there's been a massive financial commitment in terms of player salaries. Celtic's player salary last season and this season and next season is going to be higher and higher and higher. So Celtic have actually committed a heck of a lot of money in terms of player salaries, and what's more, they've upped the salaries of the backroom staff, but also all the support staff, the admin people, the grounds, and all the Celtic staff got big pay rises in the last couple of years. And as I say, Celtic's committed a lot of money for player salaries. So you can look at it one way, in that we haven't been spending an absolute fortune in the transfer window, when we have spent a lot of money, 11 on Engels, 9 on Ida. Those really haven't really borne fruit. If you think about possibly the best player at the start of the season of our transfer players, Nygren, that was about 1.5 million. Tierney we got for nothing in terms of transfer fee. He played pretty decently. Chunecki started very, very well, and then he's got worse and worse. I suspect that might be down to the fact that he got himself injured, and he hasn't really regained his form since he came back from having a thigh injury. I think Adam Ida was a good signing for Celtic. I think Celtic, however, we spent far too much money on him. So I think Ida was a perfectly good signing for Celtic. He apparently was somebody that Brendan Rodgers was desperate to get into the club no matter what the price was. I think Norwich did some very, very good business. I think the fact that we were buying Ida from an English Championship club, that also always puts the money up for how much you pay for a player when you're buying them from England, particularly if you're buying them from the English Premiership. But buying them from English Championship, you add 2, 3, 4, 5 million to the price. Perry 840. I don't think Martin O'Neill would come back to Celtic to be the permanent manager. I know that his assistant Fotheringham said that O'Neill would have stayed for longer. I don't personally think that I think Martin O'Neill thought once we got to the end of the international window, that's when he was going back to his happy domestic life in London, doing his slots for talk radio, doing his slots for American TV, doing his slots for a European TV as a pundit. I don't think he was going to be staying at Celtic for much more than into early mid-December. Also, in terms of taking Celtic forward, I think Celtic needed for this transfer window, because it's going to be an important transfer window, I think we had to have a manager in place. So, and very quickly, several other people ruled themselves out, and Wilfried Nancy became the number one choice. I think some of the other people who would have been potential choices, Ange Postecoglou, ruled himself out very early. Kjetil Knutsen, I think, ruled himself out pretty early. Kieran McKenna of Ipswich didn't show an awful lot of enthusiasm. He's on £5 million a year at Ipswich. Again, I think Ipswich will keep him for even though they don't have a very good season, they'll keep him for an extra season or two. So I don't personally think that Martin O'Neill would have stayed at Celtic in the longer term. I know people have said, he would have stayed to the end of the season. Well, yep, maybe he would have stayed to the end of the season. I think he was finding the pressure was getting more and more and more and building up more and more onto him. But that's just my personal opinion. And I don't think when he left Celtic, I think he liked leaving Celtic with Celtic having won all their domestic matches under his managership, and they'd won their previous European match against Feyenoord, having been completely paid off the pitch by Mitchell in the European game before that. So I think the players that we've got can perfectly well play three at the back. It may be a question of rearranging the threesome between Scales, Tierney and Trusty. It may be moving Tierney further out wide or Scales further out wide, and using a right-sided player like Donovan or Ralston as the right-sided centre-back. I think there are quite a number of options. I think if Johnson was fit, he would slot in really, really, really well at right centre-back. It's a position that he certainly is a player that's been linked with Celtic. I think he's playing for Coventry at the moment. I don't think he's had a particularly good time for Coventry. I don't follow the English Championship that at all close. Just had heard that he wasn't having a particularly good season, but I might be wrong. I'd say I don't follow the English Championship to know that for definite. He was a very promising player at Liverpool. He went off to play, I think it was in Austria. Didn't have a brilliant time over there. He got loaned out to Coventry. Sorry, is it Derby? Sorry, I apologise. So it shows how much I haven't really been following Bobby Clark. I'm entirely fallible. I don't think he's having a particularly good time. Well, if we're being, Scales in Scales when he was playing in the Irish League, played as a left centre back and as a left back. So he was equally trained in playing left back and left centre back. For Celtic, he's played left centre back, left back. When he went to Aberdeen, he played left centre back, left midfield, left back, left wing back. Scales has played all those positions. When he's played for, he's been playing for Ireland. He's lined up as a sort of left wing back, a left centre back. He's played all those positions. So I thought Scales actually has done a fine job playing as a left back, left wing back for Celtic, both before and recently. But you don't think his performance has been that great? Again, it's a matter of opinion. I think a better bet, Breezy Ice 27, rather than Louis Barry, would be a player like Diego Rossi, who currently plays for Columbus Crew. Diego Rossi reportedly wants to move back to European football. He did have a spell in Turkish football, which didn't go terribly well. He's had two brilliant spells in Major League Soccer, scores a ton of goals, creates a ton of goals. He links midfield and attack. He can play as a single striker. I think he would fit this system just perfectly. He wants a way, which is also really important. Obviously, the American Major League Soccer, their season's finished now. So it's a really good time to buy players from Major League Soccer. It's really a good time to buy players from the Japanese J League, and because their seasons are all finished. The problem with all the other leagues around Europe is that they're all mid-season, so teams are traditionally very reluctant to sell players. So maybe we can sign Louis Barry, maybe we can sign Bobby Clark. However, their teams if their teams are playing well, if they're playing well for their teams, they're unlikely to want to sell them at this point. I don't think in that Columbus Crew didn't play particularly hard to get in terms of the compensation fees for Nancy and the other three that were brought over. I think the delays in getting Nancy and the other three brought over were due to the fact that three of the four of them needed work permits and visas, which is nowadays a very, very complicated, long process. In the good old days, because those other three were French, which means they were part of the European Union prior to Brexit. Those three could have come in to manage and coach in Scotland straight away, as long as they had the right kind of coaching licenses, which all of them do. However, because they're French and we're not part of the EU, they all need to have work permits, visas, which takes weeks and weeks and weeks. And the minimum for getting all that to go through is 3 weeks. For many people coming to work in Scotland who are French or German or whatever from continental Europe, it's 8 weeks to get that processed. So I don't think Columbus Crew were particularly hard to get in terms of paying the compensation for Celtic to get the 4 coaches across. I don't think they play particularly hard to get, particularly if Diego Rossi wants to leave American soccer and come to play in Scottish football. It's an interesting theory. Chloe Craig is a very, very dedicated player. She's been at Celtic all her life. She's just back from 464 days out injured with an anterior cruciate. She certainly is Celtic through and through, much like the ladies' captain Kelly Clark is a Celtic person through and through. Maybe that's also a factor. Maybe people like Callum McGregor, Anthony Ralston, James Forrest, maybe they need to do a better job at convincing the other players just how big an honour it is to be a Celtic player. I don't know. But certainly, I think Celtic are lacking somebody in the team who is aggressive, and one of the few aggressive players we have had in our squad is Alistair Johnston. He clearly is out injured. None of our midfielders really sort of roll up their sleeves and get involved in the game. And I think that is Celtic are missing a player like Lennon as a player, Lambert as a player, Manyama as a player, Scott Brown. I think we really are missing a combative, aggressive midfielder or a combative, aggressive defender. Hopefully, Alistair Johnston's back maybe in a month, 6 weeks' time. I think that's probably the shortest period. He does seem to have made really good progress already. Callum Osmond apparently is making really good progress from his hamstring surgery. The two positions I would be particularly wanting Celtic to strengthen next month are somebody to take control of midfield, to boss midfield, have a bit of aggression, a bit of fight, a bit of passion, and really get his teammates riled up. So a Lennon style, a Lambert, a Victor Wanyama, a Scott Brown type of person, an inspirational, aggressive player who will get the players fired up. Now, it did appear that up to a point, Kelechi Iheanacho got the Celtic players all riled up. For me, it was quite interesting. Again, Callum McGregor was quiet. Everybody in the team was. I thought actually everybody in the team in the first half was very quiet. It's an option to bring Kyogo back, although his scoring form for Rennes and now for Birmingham is very, very poor. So if he did come back to Celtic, he would be coming back with with very low confidence, in that he had a terrible time in French football, and he's not having a great time in English Championship football. He's really, really struggled since he left Celtic. And to be fair, his last half a season at Celtic wasn't terribly good either. So I think possibly for me, Kyogo is past his best. I think he still would do a perfectly reasonable job. I don't think he is our number one striker, but I think we do need definitely a number one striker. I would not have been averse to bringing Kyogo back in the summer, and more so averse to bringing him back in January, simply because he had a terrible time in French football. He's had a poor time in English Championship football. I think there's an argument to have Kyogo as being a player to come off the bench, a player to be a spot starter. But I think we definitely need a proper, reliable goal scorer who's going to get us 20, 30, 40 goals in a season. Last season, Dijsselmeyer scored us 30, Kuhn got us 20 plus, Ida got us 20 plus. That's why we were a big success last season. We won the league comfortably. We won the League Cup comfortably. We were very disappointed when it came to the Scottish FA Cup final, losing to Aberdeen, a game we should never have lost, in my view. Yep. So that's my personal feeling. I agree 100%. Eddie C88. Kyogo, I think, has lost his confidence. If bringing him back to Celtic, he got his confidence back, I think he would be a useful player coming off the bench. But I'm not convinced he would be our week in, week out striker, guaranteeing us a 30-goal season. And that's, I think, what Celtic kind of need is a player who's going to come in the second half of this season and score 15, 20 goals in half a season. Yes, so Kegler Moon, I completely agree. Kyogo had been desperate to leave in the summer before. We sold him in the January window, the start of the year. I thought he was disappointing in the 4 or 5 months of the season. He did play for us last season. Didn't score that many goals for us in half a season. He was primarily our first choice striker all that time. Ida was mostly playing off the bench at that point. Ida, in the end, did come back to score 20 goals in the season. Kuhn scored 20 goals last season. Maida, I think it was 33. We really do require a player like that. Can't remember. I thought maybe Giakoumakis had moved on already, but yes. So just double checking there. Giakoumakis is currently on loan in Greek football. So Cruz Azul in Mexico have loaned him to PAOK in the Greek league. So he's not available for us unless Celtic can negotiate some form of recalling his loan. Yep. So Giakoumakis is currently playing in. According to Transfer Market site and Wikipedia, he's playing for PAOK in Greek football. So So yeah, he was very successful with Cruz Azul in the Mexican League. However, as has been the want with Giakoumakis, wherever he's been, he never stays anywhere for very long. He was in Dutch football for a couple of seasons. He was obviously with us for a couple of seasons. He then went off to Mexican football. He's been there for a couple of seasons, and then he gets itchy feet and he moves on. I'm not so sure about that. May be the case. Just all I would say with Giakoumakis, as I said, everywhere Giakoumakis goes, he stays for a couple of seasons. So whether it's just he falls out with the board, falls out with people every couple of years, but he does seem to be a player that always wants to move on to somebody else. So he's been across in Mexico for a couple of seasons. He was in America for a season or two. He moved from America to Mexico. He's been in Mexico a couple of seasons. He's now moved on loan back home to Greece. I think, and I think this is probably not a very controversial point. I think Celtic scouting and recruitment, for one reason or another, or probably lots of different reasons, has been particularly poor since Ange Postecoglou moved on, and we brought in Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers brought some of his own people with him. Some of the Postecoglou people were kicked out by Rodgers and by Nicholson and so on, because Rodgers wanted his mates around him. A couple of the coaches who were under Ange Postecoglou got moved on. A couple of the backroom sort of sports science and physios and stuff got moved on when Postecoglou left. Ueda of Feyenoord was really, really impressive. However, I don't think it's reasonable. I don't think Feyenoord would sell Ueda to Celtic. I can see Ueda moving to one of the bigger leagues this January. From memory, he's the top scorer in Dutch football at the moment. So, yes, I think our scouting department, our recruitment department is substandard. And a lot of that seems to be relating to Paul Tidsdale. He seems to have this overarching role. Brendan Rodgers brought him in as he was this football doctor or something. He was supposed to be really, really good at football analysis, really, really good at scouting, really, really good at identifying the right players, really, really good at identifying how to get players better and better. And Paul Tidsdale, for me, has been a complete and utter failure, fiasco. I think he was roughly coinciding with when Celtic scouting, recruitment, and player development went down and down and down. Is when a couple of people who were doing that role under Postecoglou got kicked out, and Rodgers brought in a couple of his mates and brought in Tidsdale to be behind the scenes. Yep. So for me, he's been a massive disappointment at the club, and the story was that player identification was under Rodgers was Tidsdale and Rodgers would put their heads together. Then Tidsdale would then organise the other scouts to go off and see people. Often Tidsdale would then go and see the player after the scouts had seen them, and then they would bring that back to the money people, and then the money would be paid for the player, etc. It seemed like also that it was a rather long, convoluted scheme where there were too many people involved. But the story was that Tidsdale and Rodgers identified which players they wanted. They were then scouted, the reports were then made, Tidsdale and Rodgers then made their decision. That was then passed on to the recruiting people and the Nicholsons and Mackays of the world. And then, so for me, it's a combination of all those different steps. The manager and the Tidsdales identifying a player, the scouting people not doing a good enough job, and the players we have identified they want to sign, too many of them haven't been up to standard. Well, I think our scouting under Ange Postecoglou for those 2 seasons was way better than it has been in the 2 years under Rodgers, or actually now we're into 2.5 years under Rodgers, although he's now gone. But it's the Rodgers scouting recruiting team who have been in charge the last 2.5 years. I thought our scouting to bring in Kyogo, bring in O'Reilly, bring in players like Carter Vickers and Jota on loan was good. Bringing in the Japanese players, Alistair Johnston, Matt O'Reilly. I think our scouting team did a lot better job under Postecoglou. Whether it was Postecoglou was much better at identifying which players to go for than Rodgers and Tidsdale had been, I don't know. I don't know if David Pleat's still involved. He certainly seemed to be involved at the start of the season, but I haven't heard anything about him still being a Celtic coach. To be fair, David Pleat was a pretty successful manager in English football, never really properly hit the heights, but he was a decent manager, tons and tons of experience. I don't know how important he is in terms of Celtic's coaching and scouting. I don't think he's got such a role anymore that he used to. Yes, Clashman Numpty. I think that supposedly this is what Paul Tidsdale was brought in for by Brendan Rodgers. Was that he was going to modernise our scouting, our data analysis. Sorry, excuse me. That Tidsdale was going to improve our club scouting. He was going to improve our player development, i.e., bringing through the teenagers and the academy players into the first team, bringing in the young players and making them better and better. This is all going to be down to Tidsdale, and our data analysis was supposed to be much better because this is what Tidsdale was an expert in doing. He was the football doctor. He hasn't really been a football doctor for Celtic. Or if he is a football doctor, he's been making Celtic sick rather than making them better. I think the problem if David Pleat is supposedly is our person scouting players from England, the fees you have to pay for any player coming from English football is astronomical. The amount of money that's swirling around in the English Premiership and the English Championship is pretty incredible. The salaries that players are on in those two leagues is absolutely beyond belief. You've got a player like Mohamed Salah who's on £400,000 a week. Absolutely incredible amount of money. And look how well Mohamed Salah has been playing for Liverpool this season. Liverpool give him a bigger contract and the reward is some terrible performances. But obviously Salah's not the only player who's on incredible amounts of money to play in England. But signing any players from any English club, any English Premiership or English Championship club, you're paying far more than the player's worth, and you've also got massive wage bills to bring that player in. Obviously, Kieran Tierney is a good example. At Arsenal, £110,000 a week. Reportedly at Celtic, he's on something between £40,000 a week and £50,000 a week, which puts him just a wee bit ahead of the Carter Vickers, the McGregors, the Jotas, and so on. We had previous manager was Brendan Rodgers, who was on £3 million to £3.5 million a year. We obviously were paying a lot of money for Brendan Rodgers' expertise. Not convinced we got £3 million worth of manager from Brendan Rodgers. He was by far and away the highest paid person at Celtic. And if he was still at Celtic, he still would be the highest paid person, way above the salary that Tierney's getting, way above the salary that McGregor, etc., is getting, way above the salary that people like Nicholson and Mackay and so on are getting. I would seriously doubt that Wilfried Nancy is getting anywhere near as much money as Rodgers was getting. Yes, you're Sligo boy. You're entirely right. We are still in 4 competitions. Admittedly, we haven't actually started the Scottish Cup yet for this season, but we're in there. We've got an apparently easy draw in the first game. We've got a very, 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 very winnable game on Sunday to get the first trophy of the season. I personally think that Celtic are going to win on Sunday. I think I'm a lot more confident about Celtic beating St Mirren on Sunday than I was of Celtic beating or drawing with Roma. My prediction for the Roma match was it was going to be a draw. I think had Celtic made a good start to the game, that a draw would have been perfectly within Celtic's scope, but we made possibly the worst possible start to the game by giving away an own goal in the 6th minute. I think an own goal is even more dispiriting and demoralising than giving away a header. I think one of the other things is Celtic probably do need to, as has been the case for the last couple of seasons, I think we've got to do an awful lot better job of defending long throws and corners and stuff. The first game against Hearts, we really, really struggled defending long balls and corners and free kicks into the box. This game, the game against Hearts, again, we were very poor at defending corners. So I think it's very much something that everybody behind the scenes at Celtic is going to have to work on really, really hard. We were, I thought, showing a bit of progress in terms of defending dead balls and long throws, but that seems to have gone away over the last 3 or 4 months. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jinx it. I was touching wood when I was saying that I thought Celtic would win on Sunday. I still think I'm very confident about Celtic winning on Sunday. I think winning on Sunday will be a big kickstart to the season. We've then got quite a obviously compacted fixture list over Christmas and New Year. Compacted fixture list going through January. We've got 2 Europa League games in January. In the middle of that, we've got the away game against Hearts. Unfortunately, I don't have a fixture list to put up on the screen. Just give me a wee second. I was trying to share the screen, but it wasn't really working properly. So obviously we're playing St Mirren this Sunday, then we're playing against Dundee United on the following Wednesday. Yep. So basically, sorry, I was trying to share the screen for Celtic's fixtures with the BBC site, but I couldn't get it to work properly. So on Sunday the 14th, so obviously this Sunday we're playing St Mirren in the League Cup final. Then on the Wednesday the 17th, we're playing Dundee United at Tannadice, 8 o'clock kickoff. The following Sunday, it's a 3 o'clock Celtic Park game against Aberdeen on the 21st. Then on the 27th of December, it's Livingston away, which isn't ideal. And then on the 30th of December, it's Motherwell at Motherwell. So basically over the course of the next 16 days, we've got St Mirren, Dundee United, Aberdeen, Livingston, and then Motherwell. And then on Saturday, the 3rd of January, we've got Rangers. Then we've got Dundee United again, Falkirk, Auchinlecht. Then we've got Bologna on Thursday the 22nd, Hearts on Sunday the 25th, and then Utrecht on Thursday the 29th. So basically, we've got some really, really tough games. We're playing every sort of 3 or 4 days between now and the end of January. We've got in that time, we've got the League Cup final. We've got our next game against Hearts. We've got the first Rangers game under Nancy. Yes, so basically, I don't think there's any easy games as such. No, I think the game against St Mirren, touch wood, is a game that Celtic will win. Game against Dundee United, a game that Celtic will win. I think we've got every chance of beating Aberdeen. I'm not convinced that I think there's an argument to say that the Rangers game could be a difficult game. Their form has been so inconsistent. I obviously didn't watch their game against Ferencváros tonight, so I don't know how they played. They obviously were 1-0 up at one point. They then blew their lead. It's going to be interesting for me to see how Celtic settle down, see how quickly Nancy can get his framework, his tactics, his formations bedded in. I think the fact that in both the Hearts game and its spells in the game against Roma, we did show that we were able to play that way. Just we haven't been consistently able to play it, and also what's most important is we haven't been really making getting that final pass, final shot, etc. And when we have had that final shot, Iheanacho was offside. Engels misses the penalty. Hatate hits the bar. Engels hits the goalkeeper. Maeda hits the goalkeeper. Maeda misses from 6 yards. Again, so what we've really lacked is that final little bit of quality in the final third, be it the killer pass through the team, or having done that really good pass or cross, the person who's received the cross has missed. So Well, the thing is, Rangers are liable to be playing one striker, which would probably be Miovski. That way, 3 at the back actually works perfectly well. If that means that Kieran Tierney or another of the centre backs is allowed to get more further and further forward, I think that's a really useful thing. I think if we make the wide players a wee bit more defensive, such as using Donovan on one side, Tierney or Scales or someone like that on the other side, I think that maybe works a bit better. And then we can try and get a bit more of the width from the attacking midfielders or the midfielders or the more central midfielders going out wide as well. So I think there are a number of different options, which may be why maybe Luke McCowan gets a look in again. If we do make the wide midfielders a bit more defensive. So I think the formation that Nancy has is a really good formation once it starts working properly. I think Johnson coming back is going to be very, very important. Obviously, he played under Thierry Henry and played under Wilfried Nancy in Montreal. It was his great form for Montreal that triggered his move to Celtic under Ange Postecoglou. I think over the last 2-3 seasons that Johnson's been at the club, he's been one of Celtic's most consistent best players. I think he is, of all the players that are out injured, he's the one that we're missing the most. I think he's a leader on the pitch. I think he is a very good player, tackles, shoots, scores, creates goals, runs his heart out, tons of energy up and down the wing. He's a good defender, has good capability in the air as well. I think he's a perfect player to play either right centre back or right wing back in this 3-4-3 type formation. I think McCowan would work well in this system as well. I think we could use him as the wide player if we're looking for that wide player to be a bit more defensive and not hitting the byline like we're trying to use Chinecki to do. I think Chinecki isn't good enough at coming back to defend, which is why maybe if Maeda stays at the club, putting Maeda out there, because Maeda will bomb up and down the wing and defend and get forward to attack. I think the problem with Chinecki is he doesn't get back to defend very well. I think Yang is still learning to defend better and better. He was better against Hearts than he was against Roma. I think that's part of the fact was that yes, I think you're quite right. Carlin 01. I think Johnson would give us both attacking options and defensive options, chance creation options. I think he also would give us leadership, and he would give us a player with not just leadership but also a bit of bite and aggression and man motivation. I think he also knows the Nancy system better than anybody else. So I think he will be a very important player when he comes back from injury. I think Jota could be an excellent player as one of those two attacking midfielders behind the main striker. So I do think they all could be big important players. Well, the only counter to that, Kieran Kennedy, is the fact that nobody can doubt that he has been very, very successful in Major League Soccer at Montreal and at Columbus Crew. He's been a manager as such, so the head coach or manager of a club for 4 years, in which time he's won 3 tournaments, 3 trophies, a league and a couple of cups in the league. He took the Columbus Crew to the equivalent of the Champions League in North and Central American soccer. So he's proven that he is a very, very successful coach in Major League Soccer. And as we mentioned at the start of the live stream, the Major League Soccer is rated way, way higher than the quality of the Scottish Premiership in terms of player quality, team quality, consistency of quality. In Major League Soccer, there are lots and lots and lots of teams who are good. In Scottish football, there aren't many teams that are good. But in Major League Soccer, you've got to play really well every single week. Otherwise, you lose a lot of games, which is why his record of wins and losses is a wee bit difficult. Well, let's say. I think Wilfried Nancy is a very high quality coach, much like Ange Postecoglou, who was a very high quality coach. Everybody was skeptical about him at the start. I don't really remember anybody in terms of the media, pundits, journalists, Celtic fan sites, etc., being the least bit convinced that Postecoglou would do it. Now, to be fair to Postecoglou was and is a lot more experienced than he's won. Well, Nancy's won 3 trophies in 4 years with a low budget at Montreal and a low budget at Columbus Crew. So, despite the fact that he was competing against clubs with an awful lot bigger budget in both places, he won the tournaments. If we're looking at in terms of, so we can say that Nancy has played, been head coach manager 4 years, and he's won three trophies. If we think about Celtic's greatest ever manager, Jock Stein, when he took over as manager of Celtic, he'd been a full-time top manager for 5 years. He'd managed Dunfermline and Hibs. He won 1 trophy at Dunfermline, no trophies at Hibs. And he had 5 years experience as being the manager of a football club. So Jock Stein had 2 less trophies and 1 more year as a manager experience before he came to Celtic. We then went to Billy McNeill, who'd had 15 months of experience, no trophies. He won trophies for Celtic. Over the years, we've actually had a lot of managers who've come in with no experience and done very well. We've had several managers come in with lots and lots of experience and do very poorly. Now, Ange Postecoglou, admittedly very, very, very experienced, 27 years as a manager, Australia, Japan, international, etc. And he had 7 trophies as a manager before he came to Celtic. So, so we've had some very good managers with tons of experience, some very good managers with no experience, and some very good very experienced managers who've been completely complete failures at Celtic. So I think Nancy is going to be a good manager for Celtic. But he won the league and the cup with Columbus Crew, and he won the Canadian Championship within the Major League Soccer system with Montreal. So he's got three trophies as a manager, 1 with Montreal and 2 with Columbus Crew. That's my understanding. And again, I could be wrong. Yes, so Breezy Eyes 27, I think that's a key thing, is him being backed by the board, but not just backed by the board, but backed by you and me and all the other Celtic fans, and backed by all the other Celtic channels, the Celtic pundits, the Celtic ex-players. I think everybody needs to rally round the players, the coaches, Nancy. Everybody has to be pushing Celtic forward rather than pushing Celtic to the side or pushing Celtic backwards or pulling them here, there, and everywhere. Everybody has got to get behind Wilfried Nancy. And you're entirely right that the board has to get behind him in terms of giving him confidence, giving him money, giving him the backing in terms of choosing which players get moved on, which players get brought in, all these kind of things. But I think it's also massively important that we as Celtic fans get 100% behind Wilfried Nancy, because if we're not behind Wilfried Nancy, it's going to then permeate down to the pitch, and the players will get all demoralised, much like they did under Brendan Rodgers in the 2 months after the transfer window finished. The board was Rodgers and the board were fighting each other. Rodgers and the fans were fighting each other. The board and the fans were fighting each other. The fans internally were fighting each other, and Celtic was being pushed and pulled and kicked and so on. So I think everybody has to get behind. That's a good point. I didn't think we would beat Roma. I think taking on the third best team in Italian football is always going to be a challenge. Taking on a team that's got such massive strength and depth is always going to be a challenge, as was proven last season when we got beaten by Dortmund, as was proven last season when we got beaten by Aston Villa, and as was seen by when we got beaten by Bayern Munich in Glasgow. Now, admittedly, we went across to Germany and we gave Bayern Munich a really difficult second leg. We were very close to taking them into extra time and so on, but that didn't pan out. We gave away a silly goal late in the game against Bayern Munich in Munich. However, our difficulty last season and this season is we don't have the massive quality on the bench that the really big, rich clubs do. So we ended up losing 3-0. If we're going to go down the lines of ifs and buts and whatevers, we had a penalty kick that we missed. We had Hatate missed from close range. We had a goal disallowed. We had a couple of other chances in the first half, a couple of other chances in the second half that didn't quite come to fruition because our last pass, our last shot didn't work. On another day, Liam Scales' own goal hits the bar or goes wide, much like in the second half. Engels did a really good in-swinging corner. The Roma defender went up for a header. He misplaced his header and it skewed across the goal and just missed the top corner of the net. Went for a corner on the other side. So on another day, Scales' misplaced header hits the bar and goes away, or goes over the bar for another corner. It didn't. It went in the net. Lots of things can happen in a football game. Lots of things can go in your favour, can go against your favour. We didn't take our chances tonight, but we had the chances to, in the end, as it turned out, to have got a draw out that game. Whether then Roma would have redoubled their efforts in the second half, who knows? Second half, Schmeichel made a couple of saves. They had a goal disallowed, so I don't think they played softer, didn't play at their best in the second half. I think Roma were going for as many goals as they could do because they realised they had Celtic on the run, and they realised that they had the measure of quite a number of Celtic's players, and they realised that they had more quality that they could bring off the bench once players like Ferguson and Soulé, etc., got a bit tired or were on yellow cards and stuff. Yeah, so I think Scales for the first goal was unlucky. Scales didn't mark Ferguson at all well. The whole of the first half, when it was Scales' job to mark Ferguson, he let Ferguson get runs on him several times. It cost us the second goal, cost us the third goal. Scales not matching Ferguson's runs, not getting a challenge in Ferguson. In the second half, when Bailey was coming through the middle, Scales twice gave the ball away, and Bailey got in behind. One time, Schmeichel made the save. The other time, Trusty got back to defend and block Bailey out. Then Bailey obviously scored a goal. They got disallowed for offside. But again, that was poor defending by Scales and McGregor on the left side of our box. So quite a number of defensive errors tonight were very largely in the ballpark and the responsibility of Liam Scales. I think of all of Celtic's defensive players, Scales may be the least well suited to the Nancy system of a back three, unless we're going to play him as the left centre back. I don't think he works in the middle as the middle centre back. I think he might work better as the left centre back, moving Trusty into the middle or moving Tierney into the middle. I think I think there was just too much pressure, too much focus on Liam Scales tonight. Yep, I would agree with you there, Breezy Ice. Feyenoord not for any, Feyenoord are right down the bottom of the Europa League. Their form in Europa League has been really quite poor. Their form in Dutch football has not been quite so bad. However, they did have a lot of injuries going into the game against Celtic. The other thing to remember about the game against Feyenoord in Rotterdam was the fact that large parts of the Rotterdam stadium were empty due to their fans getting banned for pyrotechnics. Yes, I would agree with you there, Kieran. I think Celtic did fight better under Martin O'Neill. However, one could equally say, and I fully accept what you're saying, for the massive majority of the games under Martin O'Neill, Celtic fought a lot better. They played as a team far better. However, against Midtjylland, we were equally bad, I thought, for me, equally badly beaten by Midtjylland as we were by Roma tonight. And that was the Martin O'Neill players, that was the Martin O'Neill teamwork, that was the Martin O'Neill coaching staff. I think Celtic got as badly beaten tonight as they did against Midtjylland. It was 3-1 against Midtjylland. It was 3-0 against Roma. There's an argument to say that we even had more chances against Roma to get goals back than we did against Midtjylland. We could easily have given another couple of goals up to both Roma and to Midtjylland in both games. But I'd be happy to accept that. In general terms, we showed more fight, more commitment under O'Neill than we did under Nancy. Whether that's the players, whether that's Nancy, whether it's a combination of the two, it's probably a combination of the two. I think in general terms too, I think that's a really super point. I think personally that I think the best way to get success for Celtic is to get 100% behind Nancy, 100% behind the players. I don't think Martin O'Neill was intended to stay at Celtic any longer than about 6 weeks. As I say the indications from what he was saying, from what people behind the scenes were saying, he was kind of committed to stay at Celtic until the end of the international break. That's when he expected to be leaving. I think that's probably what he and Nicholson and Dermot Desmond and so on had negotiated when O'Neill agreed to give up his talk radio work, his TV work down south, his TV work periodically for American TV and for European TV. He also apparently is very heavily involved in the League Managers Association. That also got put on the back burner. So I think O'Neill had several other things in his life. He's had a happy home life with his wife and family down in England. He had the League Managers Association. He had his radio work. He had his TV work. He had his other punditry work. I don't think his intention was to give up the year to Celtic or give up 6 months to Celtic. I think he agreed to stay on a bit longer after the international window, simply because the work permits for the various coaches and stuff hadn't come through. The indications are that whilst Nancy was waiting for his coaching, the visas to come through, Nancy and the scouting people and Nicholson and so on were all working out what players to be scouting and targeting in January. So I think there is a list of players that are being inquired about at the moment to get brought in January. So I do think Nancy and his team have got a list of players that Celtic are looking to try and get in if those players agree to come in. I'm very happy to put forward my theory as to who that Nancy could pick or should pick. I'm very much in the camp that I think probably this is the time for Sinisalo to take over in goals in place of Schmeichel. I think personally a back four of Donovan and Trusty and Tierney is a good idea. I think that playing Ralston or Donovan as the right wing back's a good idea. I think there's an argument to put Liam Scales or Tierney out to the left wing back role, with the other one playing as the centre back on that side. Same with with Donovan and Ralston. I think Celtic do need to have a bit of better defensive ability at those wide positions, but with also having a player who can get forward. I don't think we play Hatate and Engels in the same side with McGregor. So McGregor starts with one out of Hatate and Engels and the other on the bench. I would play Iheanacho up front, and I would play probably Nigren and Maeda behind Iheanacho as the target man. Yep. I don't think Kasper Schmeichel's confidence is as good as it should be. I think Colby Donovan is a good, big, strong, fast player. I think he's a good passer. He's got a good engine for getting up and down the pitch. I think his passing ability is good enough to have him as the right centre back. I think otherwise there's an argument for putting Ralston into that position and Donovan being the wide player. There's an argument if we're wanting a more attacking player on the left side in the left wing back role of using Daisen Maeda. As I said, he's been playing that role for the Japanese international side over the last 6-9 months or so. Yes, I do think it's an interesting one. He's number 4 goalkeeper, I think, at Man City. but he is actually he's a good high quality. Ortega's a good high quality goalkeeper. We would get him for absolutely nothing in the summer. We would probably get him for a very low cut price deal in January. He is a really good quality goalkeeper. He probably is a step above what we've got at the moment. He is third or fourth choice goalkeeper at Man City, so he's not really got a look in for playing for them. Well, as I was saying earlier on, Martin O'Neill had no intention of staying at Celtic for long. Robbie Keane was one of the ones who was talked about coming in. He didn't want to leave Ferencváros. So, yes, we could have kept Martin O'Neill, but he didn't particularly want to stay and be Celtic's long-term manager. That's what lots and lots of stories are suggesting. I know there is. Fotheringham did say that O'Neill would have stayed for longer had he been asked. That's not my understanding. That's not what lots and lots of stories have said. That's not what the other evidence being that as soon as O'Neill left Celtic, he went back into other punditry jobs down south. So it's quite clear he had things lined up for leaving for when he left Celtic, before he left Celtic. I'd be surprised if he had these other punditry jobs all lined up and all organised within just the 1 week he knew that Nancy was coming in and he was leaving after the Dundee match. I as I said, I was surprised that Celtic were linked with Ortega. My personal feeling is that Sinisalo has done nothing wrong when he has played for Celtic. I think he is the Celtic goalkeeper of the future. He's obviously got international experience. He's got a wee bit of experience in English higher levels of football. As I said, when he played for Celtic at the end of last season, he did a good job. I think that I'm not saying it's more fun being a pundit than being a Celtic manager. What I'm saying is, if you're 73 years old, you maybe want to stay at home with your wife, be close to your kids and grandkids and stuff, have the low-stress job of being a talking head on talk radio, being a talking head on various different TV channels, etc. I don't think there's any pressure doing those punditry jobs. There's no pressure being a husband, a dad, a granddad, etc. There's massive pressure on being a Celtic manager. And I think at 73, I don't think Martin O'Neill wanted the pressure of failing at Celtic. He was a big success at Celtic. He maybe realised that in the game against Dundee, the game against St Mirren, that on another day, things don't go Celtic's way. I think he was concerned. The longer he stayed at Celtic, the more likely the bubble was going to burst. And I think also when he agreed to be the Celtic interim manager, I think he understood it was going to be for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, that kind of period of time, and that he'd be back home in time for Christmas by mid-December. And so it all panned out. If you remember also, right at the very, very start, when Rodgers resigned or was forced out or whatever you want to call it, Gordon Strachan, who obviously has behind-the-scenes contacts at Celtic, his son's a coach at Celtic, he was talking about the fact that Celtic would have their new manager in mid-December, and so it all panned out. So I think when O'Neill agreed to be the interim manager, it was going to be until early December, mid-December at the latest. And so it all turned out. I don't think his commitment at Celtic was going to be for any longer than that. I have not at any point saying that Martin O'Neill couldn't be the manager of Celtic at 73. I don't think he wanted to be a manager of Celtic at 73. Remembering also he was out of management for quite a number of years after he got sacked by Nottingham Forest. He didn't go straight back into management. He was a husband and a dad and a granddad, and he was a TV and radio pundit. He chose not to go back into management after leaving Nottingham Forest, 5 years ago, or even more than that, maybe. That's the reason. I don't think O'Neill wanted to carry on being under massive, massive pressure of being the Celtic manager. I have got no problem with him being 73. I'm not saying he can't be a good manager at 73. What I'm saying is possibly if you're going to be a good manager at 73, you probably have to keep on managing every single year and be subjecting yourself to the massive pressure of being a day in, day out head coach, manager, etc. It's a massive commitment, it's a massive pressure, particularly managing Celtic or Rangers or a top team in the English Premiership. And I don't think he wanted to have the pressure of being a manager at 73, having been out of management for 5, 6, 7 years since he got sacked by Nottingham Forest. And I don't know whether anybody who's still on the live stream is 73 years old, but I doubt there are many 73-year-olds who are having a very happy, comfy life with their wife and kids and so on, and being an esteemed person who people go to ask questions and speak to, etc., and gets to give his opinion on TV and radio as a pundit. I'm not convinced there are many 73-year-olds who would want to give that life up, which is happy. He's got tons of money. He has made his fortune. He has created a most impressive legacy as a Celtic manager and a manager elsewhere. Statistically, one could argue in terms of success rate, O'Neill is Celtic's second most successful manager, maybe not in terms of winning trophies and stuff. Rodgers is ahead of him. Lennon's actually ahead of him, but his winning percentage as a Celtic head coach stroke manager is better than anybody else in the history of Celtic. And so there's a good argument to say that O'Neill would be the second best Celtic manager of all time behind Jock Stein. And I don't think he wanted to waste that legacy by being a Celtic manager for the rest of the season and having the risk of things falling flat. Because I think he also recognised that the squad wasn't as strong as it could have been or should have been. And I think also there is also the difficulty if O'Neill was still the manager, then you've got a transfer window in January and you've not got a manager who's going to be at the club any longer than possibly the end of the season at the very latest. So I think Celtic had to move on, had to get a permanent new manager. You don't feel he's got, Celtic should be getting a permanent long-term manager. And there is also a reason why in most jobs in the world, you actually retire in your 60s. I'm 58. I'm essentially retired. I chose to stop working for a variety of reasons, but part of it was just the pressure of the job that I was doing. And I decided that there were better things to do in life. And Pork Chop Express, I think sometimes, which is my case, you decide things like friends, family, enjoying yourself, etc., may be important than putting yourself under the most incredible pressure where winning is the only thing that's acceptable. So for that reason, that's why I didn't think and don't think O'Neill wanted to be a long-term Celtic manager, was that he had a very happy life. It's a very happy life he'd been living for many, many years since he got sacked by Nottingham Forest. And he decided that, quite rightly, in my view, what your wife, your kids, your grandkids, your friends, your social life, and enjoying yourself when you've got a nice nest egg of money in the bank, etc., is more important than proving yourself again. Because if he became the Celtic manager, even if the agreement was he was going to be Celtic's manager until June of 2026, that's 7 months of pressure of having to win every single game. Because a draw is not good enough at Celtic. You have to win absolutely every single game. Well, the strange thing is, a lot of people criticise Celtic for taking too long to get a new manager in. A lot of people were saying Celtic should have got a new manager in within 2 or 3 weeks. Now, possibly if we'd been bringing in a manager from English football, like Kieran McKenna, or getting Ange Postecoglou, having been sacked by Notts Forest, to come and be our manager, we could have got that person in straight away. It took longer to get in Nancy because of the work permit and visa rules. It would have taken longer to get the Bruges manager in. He's now been sacked by Bruges. It would have taken just as long, if not longer, to get the guy in from Norway, Knutsen. So if we chose to get a manager from Europe, as would be the case with Robbie Keane, people were talking about bringing in Robbie Keane. He is an Irishman. He would need a work permit and so on to work in Scotland, unless he's got dual nationality, which maybe he does do. However, because he's Irish and Ireland's in the EU and Scotland and the United Kingdom's not in the EU, he would have to have a work permit accepted to work in Scotland. Yes, I agree. I think in general terms in life, it's better to look forward than look back. I think if you look back, you learn from history, you learn from what's gone on before, but you need to be living in the now and living in the future. And you live in the past by learning from the past and then putting that into practice for the future. Martin O'Neill is not our manager. For one reason or another, Martin O'Neill is not our manager. There was never any indication that he ever envisaged being at Celtic in the longer term. Breezy Ice, you make a really good point. When we did have a live streams talking about future managers, there was almost complete and utter rejection of Robbie Keane becoming the Celtic manager. A lot of that was based on the fact he'd spent time living and working in Israel. Perfectly reasonable. He also was asked whether he'd wanted to be Celtic's manager. He said he was Ferencváros's manager. He wanted to prove himself at Ferencváros. He's been a big success at Ferencváros. He's carrying on successful with them this season. I think his plan is to keep on moving that club forward. It's possible I think my personal feeling, and again, this is just interpreting the tea leaves metaphorically, is that Knutsen really enjoyed managing Braga. He's got an incredible amount of control at Braga in terms of everything at Braga, in terms of training, scouting, youth development, transfers, salaries. He's quite an old-fashioned manager. He's got a much bigger role as the manager at Bodo Glimt, than a manager does normally in modern-day football. He's much more of an old-fashioned football manager at Bodo Glimt, where he has much more overarching control of virtually everything at the club in terms of the football players and the finances relating to the football and the development of players and so on. So I think he got cold feet because reportedly, and yes, I know, I'm sorry, I know it's Bodo Glimt, I apologise, I was thinking of two things at the same time. I apologise. I realise I made a mistake by saying Braga when I meant Bodo Glimt. So I think Knutsen at Bodo Glimt got cold feet. He was offered 2 or 3 jobs before, including going to manage Ajax Amsterdam in the Dutch league, which would have been a very high-paid job with a big transfer budget, way bigger than he has at Bodo Glimt. However, he wouldn't have had the control over the Amsterdam Ajax team that he does at Bodo Glimt. he also had said that he wasn't going to leave Bodo Glimt until Bodo Glimt were out of the Champions League for this season. So that was going to be the end of January before he would be leaving Bodo Glimt. And by the end of January, the transfer window would be gone. And so there wouldn't have been anybody to be in charge of the transfer window in terms of a manager who was going to take the club forward. Yes, and as many people have said, it's really difficult coming into a team midway through the season. Yes, and Breezy Eyes 27. Obviously, he has had big success at Bodo Glimt. He's not managed successfully anywhere else. And as you also say, we don't have a God-given right to win absolutely everything. I think some of the younger Celtic fans do think that Celtic have the right to win absolutely every trophy. As I say, the last 13-14 seasons, we've won the league all but 1 year. The last 25 years, we have been massively the dominant side in Scottish football. The great Jock Stein won a couple of doubles as a Celtic manager. We then had the quadruple double under the combination of Rodgers and Lennon. So nowadays, Celtic winning doubles and trebles is just taken for granted. But as we showed a wee bit earlier on with the stats about how Celtic were at the midpoint of several seasons, we've had other seasons where we've been behind or level with the second place team. My feeling is by the end of 2025, it's going to be roughly the same kind of position. We're going to be eeksy-peeksy with Hearts or just behind Hearts. I don't think Hearts are going to pull away from Celtic or from anybody else over the next few months. I think Hearts are going to drop points, they're going to draw games, they're going to lose games, and just as they have done ever since they beat us 3-1 in Rodgers' last game, they then dropped 8 points by drawing games and losing games, which in the first half of the season they were winning. Yes, so to answer the question, Callum Collin, yes, we can beat St Mirren. Yes, we will beat St Mirren. Touch wood. And to answer someone else's point, if we don't win the League Cup on Sunday, yes, we need to keep on supporting Wilfred Nancy. Because if we don't support Wilfred Nancy, we're not supporting the players, we're not supporting the club. The club is going to have more and more strife and fights behind the scenes. I'm sure all of us who have worked or are working, if you're not working in a happy environment in your workplace, be it a school, a factory, or a court system, or a hospital, or wherever you work, if you're not in a happy work environment, everybody doesn't perform to the best of their ability. So you do need a happy working environment. And part of that for me is the supporter supporting the club, getting behind the players, getting behind the manager. Yes, supporters and fans can do what they like. All I'm saying is this is what I would do, which is what I would do as a Celtic fan. It's what I did when Liam Brady was a terrible manager for Celtic. Lou Macari was a terrible manager for Celtic. It's what I did when Joseph Fenglos was a disappointment as a Celtic manager for one season. It's what I did when John Barnes was an awful Celtic manager. It's what I did when Tony Mowbray was a very disappointing Celtic manager. Then got behind Neil Lennon, he was a success. I got behind Ronnie Dahlia, he was a success. Got behind Brendan Rodgers and Ange Postecoglou, they were successes. But the fact that Celtic weren't doing very well, I didn't stop supporting Celtic when Celtic were having their bad years. I didn't stop supporting Celtic when I thought Brady and McCarry were poor choices to be Celtic managers. I kept on supporting Celtic. I thought John Barnes was a terrible choice as Celtic manager because he had absolutely no experience as a manager. Zero years of experience, as was the case with Liam Brady. Both brilliant players, but absolutely no record of being a manager of a football team, never mind a really high profile, high pressure football team. I don't think Celtic have to buy a whole lot of players in the transfer window because Celtic's got football players who are professional who can change the way they play. A lot of the players who are at Celtic changed the way they play to fit Ange Postecoglou's system. They then changed the way they play to fit the Brendan Rodgers system. A lot of players come from one club to another club and change the way they play. Johan Mjällby was saying when he was playing in Swedish football, he played as a central midfielder. When he came to Celtic, Celtic converted him to a centre-back. There are tons and tons of players who moved to a club and they changed the system. Some players moved to a club and they changed the position they play. When Benjamin Nygren was brought to Celtic, Brendan Rodgers changed Nygren's position completely. He virtually never played as a central midfielder, ever, before in his career. He played as a wide player, he's played as a striker, he played as a second striker, but Rodgers played him, what many people would say, out of his comfortable position. So I don't think Celtic have to change or bring in lots of new players. I think they need to bring in some players, and the players we've got will learn the system, just like they learned the system when Ange Postecoglou took over, for those who are there, just like the players who Postecoglou brought in from other teams, they learned the Celtic system. Dyson Maida didn't play the way that Dyson Maida's played for Ange Postecoglou at his previous club. Just Postecoglou was convinced that Maida would work really well in that role, was he to come and play for Celtic. So lots of players changed the way they play. They changed the system. Plenty of players change positions. So it's not a question of bringing in 7 players. It's a question of players being professional footballers and adaptable and learning a new system. And actually learning that the system they're playing isn't that different from the system they were playing before. Same way that the changeover from Rodgers to O'Neill was relatively small changes to the system, and the players adapted quickly to the Maloney, Fotheringham, O'Neill way of playing. Admittedly, the changes that Nancy has brought in are bigger changes than the changes that the players did very well moving from Rodgers to O'Neill. And that you make a really, really good point, the Kegler Moon, as well. The thing is, the players have to hit the ground running, and for one reason or another, quite a lot of the players who were brought in the summer and in previous transfer windows in the Brendan Rodgers era didn't really hit the ground running, and that's been a disappointment. Obviously, players that Postecoglou signed, players like Kyogo, Giakoumakis, quickly got settled into Celtic. Obviously, in the next transfer window, O'Reilly, Maeda, and Hatate all played really, really well right from the start. Alistair Johnson came in within 2 days. He was making his debut against Rangers, and he's been a great player for Celtic ever since. Anyway, it's now 2:10 in the morning on Friday. We've been talking for nearly 3 hours and 50 minutes. I'm starting to lose my voice. So I think it's probably as much as fun as it has been talking with everything. Thank you so much to everybody who's contributed. Thank you so much to Kieran Kennedy, Pork Chop Express, Callum Coyle, Kegler Moon, Clashman Numpty, Lauren a wee bit earlier on. Thank you to absolutely everybody and Breezy Ice, sorry, I apologise, Breezy Ice, you contributed right from the start as well. It's been brilliant. Thank you to everybody. I have to say again, it's been a tremendously good-spirited, reasoned, respectful, friendly, polite discussion. We've all got our own opinions. We've shared them really nicely. That's what I wanted when we do these live streams. Is that we should be able to have a friendly, polite debate. We should be able to share different opinions. Yes, I agree. I agree completely. The new manager has to hit the ground running as well. So thank you to Eddie C88 as well. You've given lots and lots of really brilliant comments for this evening as well. So as I said, it's now 2:10 in the morning, 2:15 in the morning on a Friday. I think it's probably time to call it a day, so we can all get a good night's sleep. Good night to you as well, Kieran Kennedy. Thank you for joining the live stream. Thank you for all your brilliant comments, and planning to do another live stream next Thursday. By that time, we will have hopefully touchwood won League Cup against St Mirren on the Sunday, then beaten Dundee United in our game in hand. Depending how Hearts get on against Falkirk, that could cut Hearts' lead to 3 points. It could potentially put Celtic level again with Hearts on points if Hearts don't beat Falkirk on Saturday rather. So speak to you all again next Thursday. We'll be going back to the 9 o'clock start almost certainly next Thursday. And if all goes to plan, we'll have got a win against St Mirren and a win against Dundee United, and we'll all be so much happier and so much more confident in Nancy and the new system. And if not, we'll have more things to talk about, more things to discuss. So the live streams I do are generally every Thursday. With it being Christmas Day and New Year's Day on a Thursday, I wasn't planning to do Christmas Day and New Year's Day live streams, but the live streams are virtually always every Thursday. So good night to everybody. Thank you for all your contributions, and next live stream, all being equal, will be next Thursday at 9 o'clock in the evening. And we can have another 2 or 3 hours of pleasant debate chat next Thursday. So until the next live stream, good luck Celtic in winning the League Cup on Sunday and then beating Dundee United in the next game. Good night and hail, hail.